So tell me, what's your expert financial advice? The question hangs in the air between us, dripping with sarcasm. I look up from pouring his third cup of coffee at 3 in the morning, and I see a man who thinks he's being clever. Expensive watch, designer clothes even at this hour, the kind of tired that comes from choosing to stay awake, not from working yourself to exhaustion. You know what's funny about life? Sometimes the universe puts you exactly where you need to be, at exactly the right moment, to say exactly what someone needs to hear. Even when they're asking as a joke. Even when they think you're beneath them. Even when everything about the situation says you should just smile, pour the coffee, and walk away. But I've never been good at doing what I'm supposed to do. Hey, before I get into this, how are you all doing today? I hope you're comfortable wherever you are, whether you're listening while driving, cooking dinner, or winding down for the night. Whatever the weather is like where you are, I hope this story keeps you company. This is one of those stories that changed everything for me, and I have a feeling once you start listening, you won't want to stop. Trust me on this one. If you end up enjoying this, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means everything. My name is Grace Thompson, and this is the story of how a single conversation at 3 in the morning transformed 2 lives in ways neither of us saw coming. This is about the night a billionaire asked me for financial advice as a joke, and I gave him an answer that shattered everything he thought he knew about wealth, success, and what actually matters in this world. Let me start from the beginning. I'm 47 years old, and I've been working at Mel's Diner on Highway 42 for the past 6 years. Before that, I worked at a 24-hour laundromat. Before that, I cleaned office buildings downtown. I'm also taking online courses to finish my accounting degree, which I started 23 years ago and had to abandon when I got pregnant with my daughter Jasmine. She's 22 now, finishing her own degree in engineering, and I've never been prouder of anything in my life. People look at me and they see a waitress. A black woman in her 40s wearing a stained apron, comfortable shoes, hair pulled back in a practical bun. They see someone who brings coffee and takes orders. They don't see that I'm 3 classes away from my degree. They don't see that I've rebuilt my entire life from nothing, twice. They don't see that I manage a community lending circle that's helped 17 families in my neighborhood buy their first homes. They definitely don't see someone who has anything to teach them. But here's what I've learned about wealth and success that they don't teach you in business school or in those fancy investment seminars. Money is just a tool. It's not the destination. It's not even really the journey. It's just what you use to build the life you actually want. And most people, especially rich people, forget that. They start collecting money like it's the score in a video game, forgetting that the point was supposed to be living a good life. The man sitting in booth 7 that night had clearly forgotten. I'd seen him come in around midnight, settling into the corner booth with his laptop and phone. We get all types during the late shift. Truck drivers. Night shift workers grabbing breakfast before heading home. Insomniacs. People who don't want to be alone in their houses. This guy was different. Everything about him screamed money, from his shoes that probably cost more than my monthly rent to the way he carried himself, like the world had been designed for his convenience. He'd been here before, maybe 4 or 5 times over the past month. Always alone. Always late at night. Always looking like someone running from something, even though he sat perfectly still. His name was Daniel. I'd heard him take a phone call once, someone addressing him as Mr. Whitmore. Daniel Whitmore. The name tickled something in my memory, but I couldn't place it until Gina, the other waitress on shift, whispered to me during her break. That's Daniel Whitmore. Like, the Daniel Whitmore. Tech billionaire. His company does that cloud storage thing everyone uses. He's worth like $8 billion or something. $8 billion, sitting in Mel's Diner at 3 in the morning, ordering black coffee and dry toast. I didn't treat him any differently. That's not how I was raised. My mama always said every person deserves the same basic respect, whether they're sweeping floors or running corporations. So I brought him his coffee, refreshed it when it got low, and left him alone with whatever demons had driven him to a highway diner in the middle of nowhere. Until that night. The night he decided to be clever. I was refilling his cup for the 3rd time when he looked up at me with those tired eyes and said, "So tell me, what's your expert financial advice?" The sarcasm was thick enough to cut. He had a slight smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. The kind that said he was testing me, looking for entertainment, expecting me to either laugh nervously or get flustered or maybe give him some folksy wisdom he could chuckle about later. I set the coffee pot down on his table. I looked him straight in the eyes. And I said the truest thing I knew. The richest man I know is my neighbor who has nothing but still shares everything. The smile dropped from his face. I continued, because something in his expression told me he was actually listening. His name is Walter. He's 73 years old, and he lives in a one-bedroom apartment that he's rented for 30 years. He worked as a postal carrier his whole life. His pension barely covers his rent and medication. By any measure you'd use, he's poor. But Walter is the richest person I've ever met. Daniel stared at me. I couldn't read his expression, but I knew I had about 30 more seconds before he either dismissed me completely or actually heard what I was saying. Every Sunday, Walter makes a huge pot of soup. Not because he's going to eat it all. Because he knows Mrs. Chin on the second floor is alone and doesn't cook much anymore. He knows the Rodriguez family just had their third baby and Maria is exhausted. He knows that sometimes I work double shifts and come home too tired to make dinner for myself and Jasmine. So he makes soup and he shares it. I picked up the coffee pot again, but I didn't move away from his table. When Marcus, the kid in 3B, needed help with his college applications, Walter spent 2 months working with him every evening. Walter never went to college himself, but he helped that boy find scholarships, write essays, navigate the whole system. Marcus starts at State in the fall. First person in his family to go to college. Daniel's jaw was tight. Something in my words was hitting a nerve. Last winter, the heat went out in our building. Landlord took 3 days to fix it. Walter had the only space heater in the whole complex. You know what he did? He set it up in the hallway and kept his door open. Gave up his own heat so everyone could get a little warmth. Ended up in the hospital with pneumonia because of it. And when we tried to pay his medical bills, you know what he said? I paused. Daniel shook his head slightly. He said, "What's the point of being warm if my neighbors are freezing?" That's wealth, Mr. Whitmore. Real wealth. The kind you can't put in a bank account. The kind that actually means something. The diner was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of cars on the highway. Daniel stared at his coffee cup like it held answers to questions he hadn't known he was asking. You asked for financial advice, I said quietly. Here it is. Money you hoard is just paper. Money you use to make life better for people around you, that's wealth. Walter has nothing, and he's the richest person I know because he understands what money is actually for. He understands that we're all in this together, and the point isn't to win, it's to make sure everyone gets through okay. I turned to walk away, assuming the conversation was over. That he'd go back to his laptop and his important billionaire problems, and I'd go back to refilling coffee for the truckers at the counter. Wait. His voice stopped me. I turned back. Daniel was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite name. Confusion, maybe. Or recognition. Like seeing something familiar for the first time in years. How do you know all this? He asked. About Walter? About your neighbors? Most people don't even know who lives next door to them. Most people don't live in a building where everyone's struggling, I said. When you're all trying to survive, you learn to help each other. You don't have a choice. You either build community or you drown alone. And you're taking accounting classes while working here? 3 jobs? I raised an eyebrow. You've been listening to my conversations? He had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. It's a small diner. Sound carries. I've heard you on the phone with your daughter. Talking about your classes. I've seen you studying during your breaks. Then you know I don't have time for philosophical debates about wealth with billionaires, I said, but there was no heat in it. Something about this man's complete attention was disarming. He wasn't looking at me like I was the help. He was looking at me like I was a person who might actually know something he needed to learn. I'll pay you, he said suddenly. For your time. For the conversation. Name your price. And just like that, the spell broke. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Of course. Of course that's where his mind went. Everything can be bought. Everyone has a price. That's how his world works. My shift ends in 2 hours, I said, my voice flat now. If you're still here, and if you actually want to listen instead of just buying entertainment, I'll talk to you. But you can't pay me for it. Some things aren't for sale. I walked away before he could respond. The rest of my shift dragged. I served the regulars their usual orders. I made small talk with George, the truck driver who always sat at the counter and told terrible jokes. I wiped down tables and refilled napkin dispensers and did all the small, repetitive tasks that make up a night shift at a diner. But I kept glancing at booth 7. Daniel Whitmore stayed. He didn't work on his laptop. He didn't make phone calls. He just sat there, drinking coffee, staring out the window at the dark highway, looking like a man who'd lost something important and couldn't remember where he'd left it. At 5 a.m., Gina came in for the morning shift. I hung up my apron, grabbed my jacket and my backpack full of textbooks, and walked over to booth 7. "I'm done," I said. "You still want to talk?" He looked up at me with those tired, searching eyes. "Yes. There's a park 2 blocks from here. Has benches. Quiet this time of morning." He nodded and stood up, leaving $200 bills on the table. Way more than his coffee and toast cost. "That's not for the conversation," he said quickly, seeing my expression. "That's tip for Gina. She mentioned her son needs new glasses." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I nodded. "The park. 2 blocks east." We walked in silence through the pre-dawn darkness. The sky was just starting to lighten at the edges, that deep blue that comes right before sunrise. The park was empty except for a jogger in the distance. I sat on a bench. Daniel sat next to me, careful to leave space between us. "Why are you really here?" I asked. "And I don't mean the park. I mean Mel's diner at 3 in the morning. Men with $8 billion don't usually hang out at highway diners unless they're running from something." He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he started talking. "3 months ago, I realized that every person in my life wants something from me," he said. "My business partners want my money and connections. My employees want job security and stock options. The women I date want the lifestyle. My family wants investments in their ventures. Everyone I meet has an agenda. Everyone wants something." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I thought that's just how life worked. You're successful, people want things from you. It's the price of achievement." But then my best friend since college asked me for a loan. $2 million to save his startup. I gave it to him, didn't even hesitate. We'd been friends for 20 years. I had a sinking feeling I knew where this was going. Found out 6 weeks later, he didn't have a startup. He used the money to pay off gambling debts. And he'd been feeding information about my company to a competitor for 3 years. 20 years of friendship, and it was all just access to my money and my secrets. Daniel's voice was flat, emotionless, but I could hear the pain underneath it. The kind of pain that comes when someone you love proves they never loved you back. "That's when I started coming here," he continued. "To the diner. Because I wanted to go somewhere that nobody knew who I was. Somewhere I could just be another customer. Somewhere people weren't trying to get something from me. But we were," I said quietly. "We wanted your money too. Your tips, your payment for food. Everyone wants something, Daniel. The question is what they're willing to trade for it and whether the exchange is fair." He looked at me sharply. "That's different. Is it? I provided a service, you paid for it. That's honest exchange. Your friend lied about what he was trading. He pretended to offer friendship when he was really offering betrayal. But everyone wants something. The difference is honesty." The sun was starting to rise now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. In the growing light, I could see Daniel Whitmore clearly for the first time. He looked younger than I'd expected, maybe late 30s. There were lines around his eyes, the kind that come from stress, not age. He looked like a man who'd achieved everything he was supposed to want and discovered it didn't mean what he thought it would. "Walter wants something too," Daniel said. "Of course he does. He wants community. He wants to matter. He wants to feel useful. So he makes soup and helps kids with college applications and shares his space heater. And in return, he gets people who check on him, who make sure he's okay, who care if he's in the hospital. That's the exchange. It's honest. It's human." "I have billions of dollars," Daniel said, and his voice cracked slightly. "I have houses and cars and investments. I've built a company that employs thousands of people. I've achieved everything I was supposed to achieve. And I'm sitting in a park at 5 in the morning talking to a waitress because she's the first person in months who's said something real to me. He looked at me with raw honesty. What does that say about my life? I thought about my answer carefully. This man was in pain, real pain, and he deserved a real response. It says you've been measuring success with the wrong ruler, I finally said. You've been counting money when you should have been counting moments. You've been building an empire when you should have been building a life. And you've been surrounding yourself with people who want what you have instead of people who want who you are. How do I fix it? I don't know if you can, I said honestly. I don't know if someone with $8 billion can ever have a normal relationship again. Everyone's always going to know you're rich. Everyone's always going to have that in their mind when they interact with you. The money changes things whether you want it to or not. He looked devastated, and I felt bad for being so blunt. But he'd asked for honesty. But, I continued, you can start measuring different things. You can stop counting dollars and start counting the things that actually matter. Do you have people who would visit you in the hospital? Do you have people who would help you move house? Do you know your neighbors? Do you make things better for the people around you? Those are the questions that tell you if you're actually successful. I don't know my neighbors, Daniel said quietly. I don't even know what building I live in half the time. I have 5 houses. I don't remember the last time anyone visited me just to visit. Everything's always business meetings or networking events. Then you're poor, I said simply. Doesn't matter how many billions you have in the bank. If you don't have people, if you don't have community, if you don't have anyone who cares about you for yourself, you're poor in all the ways that actually count. We sat in silence as the sun rose fully over the horizon. People were starting to appear in the park now. Joggers. Dog walkers. People heading to early shifts. Tell me more about Walter, Daniel said finally. So I did. I told him about how Walter organized the annual block party, how he mediated disputes between neighbors, how he kept a list of everyone's birthdays and made sure to knock on doors with a card he'd made himself. I told him about the time he helped Mrs. Chin navigate the Medicare system, spending hours on the phone with her because she didn't speak English well and the automated systems confused her. I told him about how he'd taught half the kids in our building to ride bikes in the parking lot. I told him about real wealth, the kind you build with time and attention and care. And Daniel Whitmore, billionaire tech mogul, sat on a park bench at sunrise and listened like a man dying of thirst who'd finally found water. Daniel showed up at the diner the next night at midnight. And the night after that. And the night after that. At first, I thought he was just bored. Rich guy slumming it, looking for some kind of authentic experience he could tell stories about at his fancy dinner parties. Oh yes, I've been spending time with real working people. So enlightening. That kind of thing. But he kept coming back. And he kept asking questions. Not the questions rich people usually ask. Not, how do you survive on so little money, or don't you wish you had more? He asked about Walter. About my neighbors. About how the community lending circle worked. About how we organized helping each other. About what actual daily life looked like when you couldn't just throw money at problems. On the 5th night, he brought a notebook. I'm trying to understand something, he said as I poured his coffee. It was 2 a.m., and the diner was nearly empty except for George at the counter. You said Walter has nothing but shares everything. But he must have something. He has his pension. He has his apartment. How does he decide what to share? I sat down across from him. Technically, I wasn't supposed to sit with customers, but Mel, the owner, had stopped caring about technicalities years ago as long as the work got done. He shares what people need, I said. It's not complicated. If someone needs food, he shares food. If someone needs help with paperwork, he shares his time. If someone needs warmth, he shares his heat. You don't have to have a lot to share what you have. But doesn't he need those things himself? Of course he does. But here's the thing you're not getting, Daniel. When Walter shares his soup, he's not losing the soup. He's gaining connection. He's gaining community. He's gaining people who will share with him when he needs it. It's not charity. It's investment in relationships. Daniel wrote something in his notebook. Investment in relationships, he repeated. You invest billions in companies, I said. You understand ROI, right? Return on investment? Walter invests in people. His return is that he's never alone. He's never without help when he needs it. He's never irrelevant. That's worth more than money in a bank account that just sits there growing. But money in a bank account provides security. Does it? I challenged. Your friend who stole from you, did your money provide security from that? Did your billions protect you from being betrayed? He flinched. Direct hit. Money provides the illusion of security, I continued. Real security comes from having people who actually care about you. People who would help you even if you lost everything. That's what Walter has. That's what you don't. I expected him to get defensive or angry. Rich people don't usually like being told they're doing life wrong. But Daniel just nodded slowly and wrote more in his notebook. How did you learn this? He asked. This philosophy about community and wealth? And that's when I realized we'd been talking for 5 nights, and I'd told him all about Walter and my neighbors, but nothing about myself. Nothing about how I'd learned these lessons the hard way. You want my story? I asked. If you're willing to share it. I looked at the clock. I had 3 hours left on my shift, and only George needed attention every 20 minutes or so for coffee refills. Okay, I said. But you need to understand something first. I'm not telling you this as entertainment. I'm not your poverty tourism guide. I'm telling you because maybe it'll help you understand what actually matters. I understand. I took a breath. I didn't talk about this period of my life often. It was painful, even after all these years. 23 years ago, I was in my 2nd year at State, majoring in accounting. I was 24, working part-time at a bookstore, pulling straight as on track to graduate with honors. I had a plan. Finish my degree, get my CPA, work for a firm for a few years, then start my own practice. I had it all mapped out. Daniel listened without interrupting. Then I met Thomas at a party. He was charming, funny, ambitious. He was getting his MBA, came from money, had all these big plans about starting businesses and changing the world. We dated for 6 months. I got pregnant. I paused, remembering that moment when the test came back positive. The fear, the hope, the complete reorganization of every plan I'd ever made. Thomas proposed immediately. Seemed like the fairy tale, right? We'd get married, I'd finish school, he'd start his business career, we'd be this power couple. His parents had money, they'd help us get started. It all seemed perfect. What happened? Daniel asked quietly. I had Jasmine. Beautiful, healthy baby girl. And the week after she was born, Thomas sat me down and explained the new plan. I would stay home with the baby. His mother insisted. Said it wasn't appropriate for a child to be raised by daycare workers. His father had gotten him a position at an investment firm, but the hours would be long. He needed me to handle the home front. I could still remember that conversation. The casual way Thomas had announced that my entire future had been decided without my input. I said no, I continued. I said I'd find childcare, I'd take night classes, we'd make it work. I wasn't giving up my degree. That's when his whole family got involved. His mother crying about her grandchild being neglected. His father talking about traditional values and women's roles. Thomas saying I was being selfish, that real mothers sacrifice for their children. Daniel's jaw was tight. He was writing in his notebook, but his hand was pressed so hard the pen was nearly tearing the paper. I lasted 6 months, I said. 6 months of being isolated in his parents' guest house with a baby, no car during the day, no money of my own. Thomas gave me an allowance. An allowance, like I was a child. Every time I mentioned going back to school, his mother would have a health crisis that needed attention. Every time I talked about getting a part-time job, his father would give a lecture about family reputation. You left, Daniel said. It wasn't a question. I left. Packed everything I could fit in 2 suitcases, took my baby, and walked out. His family threatened to take Jasmine away from me. Said I was an unfit mother. Said they'd use their money and connections to prove it in court. Said I'd never see my daughter again if I didn't come back and be grateful for their generosity. This was the hard part. Even after all these years, this part still hurt. I had nothing, I said. No degree. No job. No money. No family support. My parents had passed years before. I was 25 years old with a 6-month-old baby, and I had absolutely nothing. I moved into a shelter. Started applying for any job I could get. Finally got hired cleaning office buildings at night. How did you manage childcare? The shelter had a program, but it was only good for 3 months. After that, I was on my own. I found the cheapest apartment I could, a studio in the worst part of town. Started working 3 jobs. Cleaning buildings at night. Cashier at a grocery store during the day. Weekend shifts at a laundromat. Jasmine came with me everywhere. I had a playpen I'd set up wherever I was working. She learned to sleep through vacuuming, through the sound of washers and dryers, through everything. I smiled, remembering baby Jasmine sleeping peacefully in her playpen while I mopped floors at 2 in the morning. It was the hardest 3 years of my life, I said. But here's what happened. The other women working those jobs, they helped me. Maria, who worked the laundromat with me, she'd watch Jasmine when I had to work an extra shift. Keisha from the cleaning crew, she gave me her daughter's old baby clothes. The manager at the grocery store, Mr. Park, he'd let me take home the food that was about to expire. They built community with you, Daniel said. Exactly. They knew what it was like to struggle. They knew what it was like to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. So we helped each other. Not because we had extra, but because that's what you do. That's how you survive. I refilled his coffee, needing something to do with my hands while I talked. When Jasmine was 3, I moved into the building where I live now. Walter was already there. He saw this exhausted single mother with a toddler, barely holding it together, and he just started helping. Watched Jasmine sometimes so I could sleep. Brought over food. Helped me figure out how to apply for better jobs. He's the one who convinced me to go back to school. How? Daniel asked. He said, Grace, you're working yourself to death and you're still barely making it. You need that degree. You need better options. I'll help watch Jasmine. Other neighbors will help. We'll figure it out together. And they did. The whole building basically raised my daughter while I worked and went to school online. I could feel emotion building in my throat. Even now, the generosity of my neighbors overwhelmed me sometimes. That's when I understood what Walter had been trying to teach me all along, I said. Real wealth isn't what you have in your bank account. It's what people are willing to give you when you need it. It's knowing that if something goes wrong, you won't face it alone. That's security. That's wealth. That's what actually matters. Daniel had stopped writing. He was just looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Thomas and his family, he said finally. Did they ever try to contact you again? Oh, they tried. Showed up when Jasmine was 5, all apologies and family values talk. Said they wanted to be part of her life. Said they'd made mistakes, but family was important. You know what they really wanted? What? Tax deductions. Turns out claiming a dependent helps when you're in their income bracket. They literally offered me money, $1,000 a month, if I'd let them claim Jasmine on their taxes and spend 1 weekend a month with her. Daniel looked disgusted. What did you do? I told them to leave and never come back. Told them Jasmine had a family. She had Walter and Maria and Keisha and Mr. Park and 20 other people in our building who actually loved her, who actually showed up for her, who actually cared. She didn't need people who saw her as a tax benefit. Good, Daniel said fiercely. We sat in silence for a moment. George waved his empty mug at me, and I got up to refill it. When I came back, Daniel was staring at his notebook, but I could tell he wasn't seeing the words. I did the same thing, he said quietly. What do you mean? My company. My employees. I thought I was building something meaningful, but I treated people like assets. Like tax deductions. Like resources to be managed for maximum ROI. I never thought about their lives, their struggles, their needs beyond what served the company. He looked up at me, and there was real pain in his eyes. I have 1,200 employees, he said. I don't know any of their names except the executive team. I don't know if they have kids. I don't know if they're struggling. I just know if their productivity numbers hit targets. I'm exactly like Thomas's family. I'm exactly the kind of person you protected Jasmine from. But you're here, I said. You're asking questions. You're trying to learn. That counts for something. Does it? Or am I just another rich person who feels guilty for 5 minutes before going back to my comfortable life? That was the question, wasn't it? Was Daniel Whitmore actually trying to change, or was this just a phase? Was he going to take these conversations and do something with them, or was I wasting my time talking to someone who would forget everything the moment his real life called him back? I don't know, I said honestly. I guess we'll find out. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his whole body tensed. Problem? I asked. My CFO. There's an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. Major investor threatening to pull out unless I agree to mass layoffs. Says we're overstaffed by 30%. Says cutting 600 jobs would boost our stock price significantly. 600 people. 600 people who probably had kids, rent to pay, bills due. 600 people who would suddenly have nothing, just so some investor's portfolio would look better. What are you going to do? I asked. Daniel looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked at his phone. Then back at me. I don't know, he said finally. The old me would have run the numbers, calculated the financial impact, made the decision based purely on what was best for shareholder value. But now I'm thinking about 600 people who have lives and families and communities. I'm thinking about 600 people who need their jobs to survive. And I don't know how to balance that against my responsibility to the company. Maybe that's the wrong question, I said. What's the right question? Maybe instead of asking how to balance people against profits, you should be asking why your company is structured so that hurting people is the only way to succeed. Maybe the system is broken, not the people in it. Daniel stared at me. Then he started writing frantically in his notebook. What if, he said slowly, what if there's a different way to run a company? What if instead of treating employees as costs to be minimized, we treated them as people to be invested in? What if the whole model is wrong? Now you're thinking, I said. He looked at his watch. It was 4:30 in the morning. I have to go, he said. The meeting is at 8. I need to prepare. But Grace, can I come back tomorrow night? After the meeting? I want to tell you what happens. I want to talk through this more. I'll be here, I said. He stood up, left his usual generous tip for Gina, and headed for the door. Then he stopped and turned back. Thank you, he said, for sharing your story. For trusting me with it. I know that wasn't easy. Just don't waste it, I said. Don't be the kind of person who learns and then doesn't change. I won't, he said. And something in his voice made me believe him. He left, and I watched through the window as he got into his expensive car and drove away. I wondered if I'd see him again. I wondered if the board meeting would shake him back to reality. I wondered if our conversations meant anything at all in the face of $8 billion and investor pressure. I finished my shift, went home, kissed sleeping Jasmine on the forehead, and fell into bed exhausted. The next night, I came to work expecting Daniel's usual booth to be empty. He'd go back to his real life. He'd make the decision that benefited him and his investors. Our conversations would be a nice memory, an interesting experiment, but ultimately meaningless. I was wrong. Daniel showed up at midnight, like always. But this time he looked different. Energized. Almost frantic with excitement. I didn't do it, he said as soon as I came to his table. I told the board no. I told the investor if he wanted to pull out, that was his choice, but I wasn't laying off 600 people to boost stock prices. I felt something warm spread through my chest. What did they say? The investor pulled out. 2 other board members resigned. My CFO said I was being financially irresponsible. My lawyers said I could be sued by shareholders for not maximizing value. My PR team said I was committing professional suicide. He was grinning. Actually grinning. So why do you look so happy? I asked. Because for the first time in 10 years, I made a decision based on what was right instead of what was profitable. And Grace, it felt amazing. It felt like I was actually using my power for something that mattered. I sat down across from him, feeling pride swell in my chest. Maybe he was actually learning. Maybe this was real. What are you going to do now? I asked. I don't know, he admitted. The company's going to take a hit. Our stock will probably drop. We might lose more investors. But I have an idea. What if we restructured the whole company? What if instead of maximizing profits for shareholders, we maximized value for everyone? Employees, customers, communities. What if we built a different kind of company? You'd need help, I said. You'd need people who understand how to build community, how to create real value. Daniel looked at me intently. I'd need someone who understands what actually matters. Someone who's built community from nothing. Someone who knows how to help people thrive on limited resources. I saw where this was going and I held up my hand. Don't. Grace, I want to hire you. No. You're 3 classes away from your accounting degree. You understand finance, you understand business, but more importantly, you understand people and community. I need that perspective. I'll pay you. I said no, Daniel. He looked confused. Hurt, even. Why not? This could change your life. You could finish your degree, you'd have resources to help your community, I could become exactly what I've been warning you about, I interrupted. I could become someone who uses money instead of connection to solve problems. I could stop being part of my community and become someone who helps from the outside. That's not what Walter taught me. That's not who I am. Daniel sat back, processing this. But, I continued, I'll help you find the right people. I'll introduce you to people in my community who could use opportunities. I'll consult for a reasonable rate that goes into our community fund. I'll help you learn how to build what you're trying to build. But I'm not leaving my life to become part of yours. Why not? He asked, and there was genuine confusion in his voice. I'm offering you financial security, resources, opportunity. Because I already have those things, I said patiently. Maybe not the way you define them, but I have them. I have security in my community. I have resources in the people around me. I have opportunities to make a real difference right where I am. Your offer isn't better, it's just different. And different isn't always better. Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, he said. Okay, I respect that. But will you help me? Will you teach me how to do this right? That depends, I said. Are you ready to actually change? Because this isn't about making your company look good or feeling less guilty about being rich. This is about fundamentally changing how you see the world and your place in it. Are you ready for that? He met my eyes directly. Yes. Then we have a lot of work to do, I said. Starting with you meeting Walter. Really? Really. If you're going to learn about building community and creating real value, you need to learn from the master. Tomorrow's Sunday. Walter makes soup on Sundays. Be at my building at 4 p.m. Bring groceries, not money. And Daniel. Yes. Wear normal clothes. Jeans and a t-shirt. No designer anything. You're coming as a person, not as a billionaire. He smiled. I can do that. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that this decision, this moment of saying yes to helping Daniel Whitmore, was going to change everything. Not just for him, not just for me, but for everyone in my community. And not all of those changes would be good. Daniel showed up at my building at exactly 4 p.m. on Sunday wearing jeans that still had the store creases in them and a plain black t-shirt that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget, but at least didn't have a designer logo plastered across it. He was carrying 4 bags of groceries. I didn't know what to get, he said, looking slightly embarrassed. So I just bought vegetables and chicken and bread and things I thought might be useful for soup. I looked in the bags. Fresh vegetables, good quality chicken, artisan bread, expensive olive oil. He'd probably spent $200 on soup ingredients. Next time, go to the discount grocery store on 5th Street, I said. But this will work. Come on. My building wasn't anything special. 6 stories, brick facade that had seen better days, a front door that stuck unless you knew exactly how to pull it. The elevator had been broken for 3 years, so we climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. I could smell Walter's soup already. Sunday soup had a smell that filled the entire building. Chicken, vegetables, herbs, comfort in a pot. I knocked on Walter's door. Walter, it's Grace. I brought a friend. The door opened and there was Walter. 73 years old, thin from a lifetime of sharing his portions, wearing an apron that said "Kiss the Cook" that Mrs. Chin had given him 5 Christmases ago. His eyes were bright and curious behind his wire-rimmed glasses. Grace, sweetheart, he said, pulling me into a hug. Then he looked at Daniel. And who's this? This is Daniel, I said. He's trying to learn about community. I told him you were the best teacher I knew. Walter looked Daniel up and down. I could see him taking in the expensive watch Daniel had forgotten to remove, the new jeans, the way Daniel stood like someone who wasn't used to cramped hallways and old buildings. You rich? Walter asked bluntly. Daniel blinked. Yes, sir. You one of those rich people who thinks poor people are poor because they're stupid or lazy? No, sir. Not anymore. Walter grunted. Good enough. Come in. You can chop vegetables. Walter's apartment was tiny. A one-bedroom with a kitchen so small you could barely turn around in it. But it was clean and warm and filled with photos. Pictures of neighbors, kids from the building, community events. A life lived in connection with others. Daniel set his grocery bags on the counter and Walter immediately started unpacking them. Good vegetables, Walter said approvingly. Expensive, but good. You know how to use a knife. I can manage, Daniel said. Walter handed him a cutting board and a knife. Dice the carrots. Small pieces. People get more soup that way. For the next hour, I watched Daniel Whitmore, billionaire tech mogul, take instruction from a 73-year-old retired postal worker on how to properly chop vegetables for community soup. Walter didn't care who Daniel was. He cared whether Daniel was willing to work, whether he was willing to learn, whether he understood that the soup wasn't about the soup. Why do you do this? Daniel asked as he worked on his third carrot. The soup, every Sunday. Grace says you've been doing it for years. Walter stirred the pot, adding herbs with the practiced ease of someone who'd made this recipe 1,000 times. You ever been alone? Walter asked. Really alone? Not alone in a big house with people you can call. Alone like nobody would notice if you died for a week alone. Daniel was quiet. No. I have, Walter said. Long time ago, after my wife died. 20 years we'd been married. Then cancer took her in 6 months. Suddenly I'm living in this apartment by myself, no kids, no close family, just me. Worked my postal route every day, came home to nothing. Walter's hands moved steadily, adding ingredients, adjusting heat, but his voice was distant, remembering. First year, I almost didn't make it, he said. Not from grief, though that was bad enough. From loneliness. From feeling like I didn't matter to anyone, like I could disappear and the world would just keep turning. You know what saved me? What? Daniel asked quietly. Mrs. Chin. She'd just moved into the building, barely spoke English, didn't know anyone. I saw her struggling with her groceries one day, and I helped her carry them up. Next day, she knocked on my door with a plate of dumplings. Didn't say much, her English wasn't good and my Korean is non-existent, but she smiled and pointed at the food and left. Walter smiled at the memory. Those were the best dumplings I'd ever had. And I realized something. I wasn't completely alone. There were other people in this building, other people who were lonely too, other people who needed connection. So I started making soup. Started sharing it. Started building what you'd call community, though I just called it being neighborly. He looked at Daniel directly. You want to know why I do it? Because when I'm gone, I want someone to notice. I want to matter. I want my life to have meant something to somebody. And you can't buy that. You can't achieve that in solitude. You have to build it, person by person, meal by meal, moment by moment. Daniel had stopped chopping. He was staring at Walter with an expression that looked like someone had just explained the meaning of life to him. I have billions of dollars, Daniel said slowly, and I don't know if anyone would notice if I disappeared. I mean, people would notice the money was gone. But me, as a person? I don't think anyone would actually care. Then you're the poorest person in this room, Walter said simply. Money's easy. Connection's hard. You can earn money sitting alone in an office. You can only earn connection by showing up for people again and again until they trust that you'll keep showing up. The soup was ready. Walter started ladling it into containers, a practiced assembly line he'd perfected over years. Grace, start with Mrs. Chin on 2, he said. Daniel, you take the Rodriguez family on 4. Tell Maria the soup's got extra vegetables today. Good for the baby. I'll handle the rest. Wait, Daniel said. We're delivering it? I thought people came here. Some do, Walter said. But Mrs. Chen's knees are bad. Maria just had a baby and she's exhausted. Mr. Johnson on 5 works nights and sleeps during the day, so I leave his outside his door. You make the soup fit people's needs, not make people fit the soup's convenience. Daniel took the container of soup for the Rodriguez family and headed for the stairs. I watched him go, then looked at Walter. What do you think? I asked quietly. I think he's so hungry for real connection he doesn't even know how to name it, Walter said. I think he's dangerous. That caught me off guard. Dangerous how? Rich people who discover community are like addicts who discover a new drug, Walter said. They want it now, and they don't always care who gets hurt in their rush to get it. They try to buy it, manufacture it, control it. And you can't do any of those things with real community. It has to grow organic, slow, built on trust. You think he'll try to buy it? I think he already is, Walter said, looking at me knowingly. Why do you think he keeps coming to see you? Why do you think he's here right now? He thinks you can give him the secret, the formula, the trick to building what I have. But there is no trick. There's just showing up, being honest, helping people, and doing it over and over until people trust you. I felt uneasy. Was Walter right? Was I enabling something that would end badly? But he did stand up to his board, I said. He protected those jobs. That matters. It does, Walter agreed. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he really wants to change. But Grace, be careful. People with that much money, they're used to getting what they want. And what he wants right now is to feel like he matters to someone. That's a powerful want. It makes people do things they shouldn't. Daniel came back 15 minutes later, looking slightly dazed. Maria cried, he said. I gave her the soup and told her what you said about the vegetables being good for the baby, and she just started crying. She hugged me and thanked me and said I was an angel. I've never had anyone call me an angel before. How did it feel? Walter asked. Like I actually mattered, Daniel said quietly. Like I'd done something that actually helped someone in a real way. Not abstract help like donating to charity. Real help. She needed soup and I brought her soup and it made her day better. Walter nodded. That's what it's supposed to feel like. That's what you've been missing. Daniel sat down at Walter's tiny kitchen table, looking overwhelmed. I want to do more. I want to help more people. I have resources, I have money, I could make such a difference if... Stop, Walter said firmly. That's the wrong instinct. You're already trying to make this big, make it scalable, make it about your resources instead of your presence. Maria didn't need your money. She needed soup and a kind word. Those things don't scale. They're one person, one moment, one connection at a time. But I could help so many more people if you threw money at them? Walter interrupted. If you built programs and systems and turned human connection into another business venture? That's not help, son. That's control dressed up as generosity. Daniel looked stung. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? Walter challenged. You're already thinking about scale and impact and resources. You're already turning this into a project you can manage. But community isn't a project. It's not something you manage or control or optimize. It's something you're part of or you're not. The room fell silent. I could see Daniel struggling, his ingrained instincts to fix, to scale, to optimize battling against the lesson Walter was trying to teach him. So what should I do? Daniel asked finally, and there was real vulnerability in his voice. Show up, Walter said. Every Sunday, you come here, you help make soup, you deliver it. You do that for 6 months, a year, however long it takes until people start to trust that you'll keep showing up. Then and only then you think about doing more. But you earn trust first. You can't buy it, you can't rush it, you can't skip that step. Every Sunday, Daniel repeated. Every Sunday, Walter confirmed. Can you do that? Daniel thought about it. I could see him mentally reviewing his schedule, his obligations, his life that probably didn't have room for regular Sunday soup delivery in a low-income apartment building. Yes, he said finally. Yes, I can do that. Walter studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay then. Next Sunday, 4 p.m. Bring groceries from the discount store on 5th, not the fancy organic place. And Daniel. Yes. Don't tell anyone who you are. Not yet. Let people get to know you as just Daniel who helps with Sunday soup. Not Daniel the billionaire. Just Daniel the person. Can you do that? I can try. Good enough, Walter said. That night, I walked Daniel back downstairs to his car. It was parked half a block away, and in the fading evening light, my neighborhood looked particularly rough. Graffiti on the walls, broken streetlights, people gathered on corners in ways that made Daniel visibly nervous. You okay? I asked. I'm fine, he said, but his eyes kept darting around. Just not used to neighborhoods like this. It's just a neighborhood, I said. People live here, work here, raise kids here. It's not a war zone, it's just a place where people don't have as much money as in other places. We reached his car and he unlocked it, but didn't get in right away. Grace, he said, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Do you think I can actually change? Do you think someone like me can really learn to be part of a community like this? Or am I just fooling myself? I thought about my answer carefully. This was an important moment. I think you can change, I said finally. But I think it's going to be harder than you realize. You're going to have instincts that are wrong. You're going to want to fix things with money when what people actually need is time and presence. You're going to get frustrated with how slow real community building is. You're going to want to quit when it gets hard. But you think I can do it? I think if you listen more than you talk, if you follow Walter's lead, if you show up consistently even when it's inconvenient, and if you genuinely care about people as people and not as projects, then yes, you can do it. He nodded, looking determined. I will. I'll prove to you that I can do this. He got in his car and drove away, and I walked back to my building feeling a strange mix of hope and worry. Hope that maybe Daniel really could change, that maybe I was helping someone become better. Worry that Walter was right, that Daniel's hunger for connection would make him do something reckless or harmful. I didn't know it yet, but both the hope and the worry were justified. For the next 8 weeks, Daniel showed up every Sunday at 4 p.m. He brought groceries from the discount store. He chopped vegetables under Walter's instruction. He delivered soup to neighbors. He learned names, asked about people's lives, remembered details from week to week. He also started asking me more questions. Not during my shifts at the diner anymore, but during the Sunday soup sessions. Questions about how the community lending circle worked. Questions about how we organized childcare support. Questions about how we handled conflicts between neighbors. Questions about every aspect of how our community functioned. I answered them because they seemed like genuine curiosity. Because he was showing up consistently, earning trust, doing the work. Because I wanted to believe he was really changing. But then he started bringing other people. Week 9, he showed up with a woman he introduced as Jennifer, his head of HR. Week 10, he brought Marcus, his CFO. Week 11, he brought 3 members of his executive team. Daniel, I said quietly while the others were getting instructions from Walter, what are you doing? Sharing what I've learned, he said, like it was obvious. My team needs to understand this. We're trying to restructure the company around community principles. They need to see what real community looks like. Did you ask Walter if it was okay to bring people? Daniel looked confused. Why would I need to ask? We're just making soup. That's when I knew Walter had been right. Daniel still didn't get it. This wasn't his community to share. This wasn't his experience to distribute to his team like a corporate training exercise. These were real people's lives, real people's homes, real people's trust that he was casually spreading around without permission. You need to ask, I said firmly. This is Walter's home. These are our neighbors. You don't just bring strangers into people's lives without asking. But I'm trying to help them learn. You're using our community as a teaching tool, I interrupted. You're treating our lives as a case study for your business transformation. That's exactly what Walter warned you not to do. Daniel looked genuinely shocked. That's not what I'm doing. I'm sharing something meaningful. I thought you'd be happy that I was spreading these lessons. Ask Walter, I said. Right now. Ask him if it's okay that you brought 5 people into his home without checking first. Daniel walked over to Walter, and I watched the conversation. I saw Walter's expression shift from welcoming to concerned to disappointed. I saw Daniel's face fall as he realized his mistake. The soup session that day was awkward. Walter was polite to Daniel's team, but the warmth was gone. The intimacy of the previous weeks was replaced by something performative and hollow. Daniel's executives asked questions that felt intrusive, took photos without asking, treated the whole experience like poverty tourism. After they left, Walter pulled Daniel aside. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw Daniel's shoulders slump. I saw him nodding, apologizing. I saw Walter's firm but kind expression as he laid down new boundaries. When Daniel came over to me, he looked devastated. He told me I can't bring anyone else without asking first, Daniel said. He said I broke trust by treating this like a field trip. He said I'm still thinking like a billionaire who owns experiences instead of a person who's part of a community. He's right, I said gently. I know, Daniel admitted. I just wanted them to understand. I wanted them to see what I've learned. I didn't think about how it would make people feel to have strangers in their space, asking invasive questions, treating their lives like a learning opportunity. So, what are you going to do? Apologize, Daniel said. Show up next week alone. Keep showing up until I earn back the trust one damaged. And Grace. Yeah, thank you for calling me out. I needed that. I thought that was the end of it. I thought Daniel had learned his lesson, that we'd move past this bump, that the journey would continue more carefully. But 2 days later, an article appeared in TechWealth magazine. Billionaire CEO Daniel Whitmore finds purpose in poverty. How one man's journey to a low-income community changed his business philosophy. The article included photos. Photos of Walter's building. Photos of Sunday soup. Quotes from Daniel about learning from the poor and discovering real values and restructuring his company around community principles he learned from the less fortunate. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. It was Maria Rodriguez crying. Grace, there are reporters outside our building. They're asking about Daniel Whitmore. They're taking pictures of our kids. They're asking how it feels to be poor people teaching a billionaire about life. What's happening? My stomach dropped. I called Daniel immediately. Did you talk to TechWealth magazine? I demanded when he answered. Yes, they asked for an interview about my company restructuring. I told them about what I've been learning. Grace, what's wrong? What's wrong? There are reporters at my building harassing my neighbors. There are photos of Walter's home in a magazine. You exposed our entire community without asking, without thinking about consequences, without considering that maybe people don't want to be the billionaire's poverty project in the news. Silence on the other end. I didn't think, he started. Exactly. You didn't think. You took our trust, our lives, our community, and you used it for your redemption narrative. You turned us into props in your story about becoming a better person. Grace, I'm sorry, I didn't mean. I don't care what you meant. I care what you did. And what you did was betray every lesson Walter tried to teach you. You're still treating community as something you can use for your benefit. You're still thinking like a billionaire who takes what he wants. I hung up. I was shaking with anger and betrayal and fear for my neighbors who were now being exposed to media attention they never asked for. Walter called 30 minutes later. You saw the article, he said. I saw it. Walter, I'm so sorry. I brought him into our lives. This is my fault. It's his fault, Walter said firmly. He made the choice to talk to that magazine. He made the choice to expose us. But Grace, this is what I was worried about. This is what happens when people with power discover community. They want to own it, brand it, share it, use it. Even when they don't mean harm, they cause it. What do? We protect our people, Walter said. We close ranks. We tell reporters nothing. We make it clear that we're not interested in being anyone's inspiration story. And Daniel Whitmore is no longer welcome at Sunday Soup. That hurt more than I expected. Despite his mistakes, I'd started to believe Daniel was really changing. I'd started to hope that maybe someone could bridge that gap between his world and ours. But Walter was right. Daniel had proven that he still saw us as something separate from himself. Something to learn from, to be inspired by, to use for his transformation. Not as equals. Not as a community he was genuinely part of. The media attention lasted 3 days. Reporters camped outside our building. My neighbors were approached for interviews, offered money for stories about what it's like to teach a billionaire about poverty. Most refused. But a few didn't, and their quotes in subsequent articles made our community sound like a charity case, like noble savages teaching the rich man about real values. It was humiliating and invasive, and exactly what Walter had warned about. On the 4th day, Daniel showed up at the diner at midnight. I saw his car pull up and I felt my anger flare again. He came inside and walked straight to his usual booth. I let him sit there for 10 minutes before I went over. We're not doing this anymore, I said. No more conversations. No more lessons. You used us, Daniel. You took our trust and our lives and you turned it into content for your redemption story. We're done. I know, he said quietly. I know I messed up. I know I betrayed your trust. But Grace, please listen. Just for 5 minutes. Why should I? Because I shut it down, he said. I called the magazine and demanded they retract the story. I threatened legal action against any other outlet that publishes photos of your building or interviews with your neighbors without explicit consent. I hired security to keep reporters away from your community. And I'm stepping down as CEO of my company. That stopped me. What? I'm stepping down. I announced it this morning. Because you and Walter were right. I can't run a company based on community principles when I don't actually understand community. I can't lead with values I haven't lived. So I'm stepping back, putting my COO in charge, and I'm taking time to actually learn, without broadcasting it, without using it for publicity, without turning it into another achievement to add to my resume. I sat down across from him, stunned. You're giving up your company? I'm not giving it up. I'm stepping back from daily operations. I'll still be on the board. But I can't keep living a lie, Grace. I can't keep pretending I've changed when I clearly haven't. Not in the ways that matter. He looked wrecked. Exhausted and genuine and broken in a way I hadn't seen before. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know, he admitted. I know I'm not welcome at Walters anymore. I know I damaged relationships that I don't know how to fix. But I want to try. Not for a story, not for publicity, not to feel better about myself. I want to try because I genuinely care about the people I hurt. I looked at this man, this billionaire who'd had everything and was slowly realizing that he'd had nothing that actually mattered. And I saw something I hadn't seen before. I saw someone who was actually, genuinely ready to change. Not perform change, but actually transform. It's not up to me, I said finally. It's up to Walter and the community. But I'll talk to him. I'll ask if he's willing to give you another chance. No promises. Thank you, Daniel said, and his relief was palpable. But Daniel, if you get another chance, it's the last one. You mess up again, you're done. Not just with Soup Sundays, but with all of us. Understood. Understood. I talked to Walter that night. He was hesitant, hurt, wary of being used again. But eventually, he agreed to one more chance, with strict conditions. No publicity. No photos. No bringing anyone else. No talking about the community to anyone outside it. Just showing up, helping, being present, earning back trust 1 week at a time. Daniel agreed to everything. And for the next 3 months, that's exactly what he did. He showed up every Sunday. He helped make soup. He delivered it. He learned to just be present without trying to optimize or improve or scale. He learned to be part of something instead of trying to lead it. But what neither of us knew was that his stepping down as CEO had created a power vacuum. And the people who moved in to fill it had very different ideas about what his company should become. Ideas that would soon threaten everything we'd been building. 3 months after Daniel stepped down as CEO, I started noticing changes in my neighborhood. Small things at first. A new coffee shop opened on the corner where the old bodega used to be. The coffee cost $6 a cup. Mrs. Chen tried to buy her usual coffee there one morning and came back to the building in tears because the barista had been rude when she didn't understand the ordering system. Then the laundromat where I used to work got bought out. The new owners tripled the prices and removed half the machines to put in a cafe seating area. Maria Rodriguez, who did laundry for 3 families to make extra money, lost half her income overnight. The building next to ours got sold. The new owners gave everyone 60 days to move out. They were converting it to luxury condos. It's gentrification, Walter said one Sunday as we made soup. I've seen it happen in 3 different neighborhoods over my lifetime. Rich people discover a poor area, decide it's authentic or charming or has potential. They move in, bring their money, drive up prices, and push out everyone who made the neighborhood what it was in the first place. Daniel was chopping vegetables, but I could see his jaw tighten. That's not right. No, it's not, Walter agreed. But it's legal. And once it starts, it's almost impossible to stop. Over the next few weeks, it got worse. Our landlord, Mr. Petrosky, who'd owned our building for 30 years and kept rent reasonable, announced he was selling. A development company called Horizon Properties had made him an offer he couldn't refuse. The notice came on a Tuesday. 60 days to vacate. The building was being renovated into upscale urban living spaces. I sat in my apartment that night, holding the notice, trying not to panic. Where would we go? Rent in the city had skyrocketed. I'd been in this apartment for 15 years. Jasmine had grown up here. This was our home. My phone rang. It was Daniel. Grace, I just heard about your building. I'm so sorry. How did you hear? I still have Google alerts set for the neighborhood. The sale was announced in the real estate section. Horizon Properties bought 3 buildings on your block. They're planning a whole development. I felt sick. 3 buildings? Daniel, that's going to displace over 100 families. I know. Grace, let me help. I can buy the buildings. I can outbid Horizon. I can make sure everyone can stay. And there it was. The billionaire solution. Throw money at the problem. No, I said. What? Grace, I'm trying to help. You can't buy our neighborhood and expect that to fix things. That's not help. That's just replacing one rich owner with another rich owner who thinks he knows what's best for us. But you'll lose your homes. I know that. I snapped. You think I don't know that? But Daniel, if you buy those buildings, you become our landlord. You become the person with power over our lives. That's not community, that's dependency. That's exactly what Walter's been trying to teach you not to do. Silence on the phone. Then what should I do? Daniel asked, and I could hear the frustration in his voice. Just watch while everyone gets displaced? Watch while your community gets destroyed. I don't know, I admitted. But buying the buildings isn't the answer. We hung up, and I sat in my apartment feeling helpless and angry. Angry at Horizon Properties for seeing my neighbors as obstacles to profit. Angry at the system that made housing a commodity instead of a right. Angry at Daniel for having the resources to help but not understanding how to use them without creating new problems. Angry at myself for not having answers. The next Sunday, the soup session was tense. Everyone in the building had received the eviction notices. People were scared, angry, scrambling to find new places they could afford. Maria was crying because she couldn't find anywhere in the city that would take her family of 5 on her income. Mr. Johnson had lived in the building for 23 years and had no idea where he'd go. Walter made extra soup. He always made extra when people were hurting. Daniel showed up, but he was quiet, subdued. He helped cook, he delivered soup, but I could see something working behind his eyes. Some plan or idea he was turning over. After the deliveries, he pulled me aside. I want to show you something, he said. Tomorrow. It's important. Daniel. Please, Grace. Just trust me. One more time. Against my better judgment, I agreed. He picked me up Monday morning in a regular car, not one of his expensive ones. We drove across the city to a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Nice area, but not fancy. Solid middle-class homes, well-maintained buildings, parks, and schools. He pulled up in front of a large community center. What is this? I asked. Come inside. The community center was beautiful. Bright, clean, filled with programs. Daycare in one wing, after-school programs, job training, community meeting spaces, even a small health clinic. Daniel led me to a conference room where a woman in her 50s was waiting. She was black, wearing professional clothes, but with an easy smile that reminded me of Walter. Grace, this is Patricia Johnson. She runs this community center. Patricia, this is Grace Thompson, the woman I told you about. Patricia shook my hand warmly. Daniel's told me so much about you and your community. I'm sorry to hear about the displacement. I looked at Daniel, confused. Patricia used to work in affordable housing development, Daniel explained. She's been running this center for 10 years. I asked her to consult on a project I'm working on, and I wanted you to be part of the conversation. What kind of project? I asked warily. Patricia pulled out a folder. Community land trusts. Have you heard of them? I shook my head. They're a way to permanently preserve affordable housing, Patricia explained. Basically, a nonprofit organization owns the land, but residents own their homes. Because the land isn't for sale, it can't be bought by developers. It removes housing from the speculative market. She spread out papers on the table. Charts, legal documents, case studies. Daniel approached me 2 weeks ago, Patricia continued. He wants to create a land trust for your neighborhood. Buy the buildings from Horizon Properties before the sale closes, transfer ownership to a community land trust, and ensure that the housing stays affordable permanently. I stared at Daniel. You've been planning this for 2 weeks and didn't tell me? I didn't want to get your hopes up until I knew if it was possible, he said. Patricia's been helping me navigate the legal and financial aspects. We think we can do it. But Grace, here's the important part. I don't want to own the land trust. I don't want to control it. I want the community to control it. Patricia nodded. The land trust would have a board of directors. Residents would make up the majority. They'd make the decisions about rent levels, maintenance, new tenants, everything. Daniel would be a minority board member at most, just one voice among many. This is different from me just buying the buildings, Daniel said. This is about creating a structure where the community has real power. Where you're not dependent on my goodness or anyone else's. Where the housing is protected no matter what happens. I looked at the documents, my mind racing. How much would this cost? A lot, Daniel admitted. But I can afford it. And more importantly, once the trust is established and the buildings are paid off, it's self-sustaining. Rent from residents covers maintenance and operations. The community becomes independent. It sounded too good to be true. What's the catch? Patricia smiled. The catch is it's complicated. It takes time to set up correctly. We need community buy-in, legal filings, negotiations with Horizon Properties. And we have about 5 weeks before their sale closes and everyone has to move out. 5 weeks to set up a land trust, negotiate with a development company, and transfer ownership of 3 buildings? I said. That's impossible. It's difficult, Patricia corrected. But not impossible. I've done it before, though usually with more time. We'd need the community on board. We'd need people willing to put in work. We'd need cooperation from your current landlord and some luck with Horizon Properties. Daniel leaned forward. Grace, I know I've messed up before. I know I've broken trust. But this is different. I'm not trying to save you. I'm trying to give you tools to save yourselves. Patricia would run the legal side. The community would make the decisions. I'm just providing capital and then stepping back. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe this could work. But I'd been burned before. I need to talk to Walter, I said. And the other residents. This isn't my decision alone. Of course, Daniel said. That's exactly right. It should be a community decision. That night, I called an emergency meeting in Walter's apartment. 15 people crammed into his tiny living room. I explained Daniel's proposal, showed them the documents Patricia had given me, laid out the possibilities and the risks. The reactions were mixed. Maria was hopeful. This could let us stay? Really stay? Not just for a year, but permanently. Mr. Johnson was suspicious. And we're supposed to trust a billionaire to actually give us control? To not pull the rug out when he gets bored or changes his mind. Mrs. Chin didn't fully understand the English in the documents, but she understood the core concept. Community-owned building? Not landlord. Not exactly, I explained in simpler terms. A trust owns the building. We control the trust. We make the decisions together. Walter had been quiet through the whole presentation. Now he spoke up. I've seen a lot of things in my 73 years, he said. I've seen a lot of promises from people with money. Most of them break those promises the moment it becomes inconvenient. But I've also seen Daniel show up every Sunday for months. I've seen him mess up and apologize and try to do better. I've seen him actually listen. He looked around the room. This could be a trick. It could be another way for him to control us while pretending we have power. But it also might be real. It might be a genuine chance to protect our community. And I think it's worth finding out. So what do we do? Maria asked. We vote, Walter said simply. This is our community. We decide together. All in favor of working with Daniel and Patricia on this land trust idea, raise your hand. Slowly, hands went up. Maria. Mrs. Chin. Mr. Johnson, reluctantly. The Rodriguez parents. One by one, people chose hope over cynicism. All 15 hands were raised. Okay then, Walter said. We try. But with conditions. We want everything in writing. We want lawyers who represent us, not Daniel. We want to understand every step. And if at any point this stops feeling right, we walk away. Agreed. Everyone nodded. I called Daniel that night. We're in. But we have conditions. Name them, he said. I laid out Walter's requirements. Independent legal representation for the community. Full transparency on all documents and decisions. The right to back out at any stage. Regular meetings where Patricia and Daniel explained everything in plain language. Done, Daniel said without hesitation. Grace, I know you're taking a risk trusting me. I won't let you down. Not this time. The next 4 weeks were a blur. Patricia became a constant presence in our building. She held workshops explaining how land trusts worked, what our rights and responsibilities would be, how decisions would be made. She helped us understand the legal documents, answered questions with patience, never talked down to anyone. Daniel worked behind the scenes, negotiating with Horizon Properties. They didn't want to sell. Their development plans were worth millions more than what they'd paid. But Daniel offered them an amount that was hard to refuse, plus some complicated deal involving other properties he owned that I didn't fully understand. Meanwhile, I was coordinating community involvement. We formed committees. Maintenance committee to assess what repairs the buildings needed. Finance committee to understand the budget. Governance committee to draft bylaws for how decisions would be made. My neighbors stepped up in ways that amazed me. Mr. Johnson, who I'd only known as a quiet night shift worker, turned out to have accounting experience and led the finance committee. Maria, despite having 3 kids and working 2 jobs, somehow found time to coordinate with other residents about their needs and concerns. And Walter, at 73 years old, became the heart of the whole operation. He made sure everyone was included, that quieter voices got heard, that conflicts got resolved. He turned what could have been chaos into actual community organizing. But not everything was going smoothly. 2 weeks into the process, I got a call from Daniel at midnight. His voice was tight with stress. We have a problem. Horizon Properties just filed an injunction. They're claiming I'm interfering with their business, trying to block the sale maliciously. They're threatening to sue me and accelerate the eviction timeline. My stomach dropped. Can they do that? Their lawyers think they can. Patricia's looking into it, but if they succeed, everyone could be forced out in 2 weeks instead of 5. What do we do? I'm calling in favors. Talking to my legal team. But Grace, I need you to prepare the community. This might not work. We might run out of time. I had to tell Walter. Had to tell everyone that our hope might be yanked away even faster than we'd feared. The next community meeting was tense. People were scared, angry, feeling like the universe kept knocking them down every time they tried to stand up. Maybe we should just look for new places, Mrs. Chen said quietly. Maybe fighting is too hard. No, Maria said fiercely. No, we've come this far. We've put in this work. We're not giving up now. But if we don't have time, Mr. Johnson started. Then we make time, Walter interrupted. We fight. Not with money, we can't compete there. But we fight with visibility. We make noise. We make it hard for Horizon Properties to quietly push us out. What do you mean? I asked. Walter smiled, and there was steel in it. I mean, we go public. Press conferences. Social media. We tell our story before Daniel's story drowns it out. We make this about community fighting for survival, not about billionaire pet projects. It was risky. The media attention had burned us before. But this was different. This was us controlling our own narrative. I'll contact the local news, I said. Community interest stories. Displacement, gentrification, families fighting to stay in their homes. I'll handle social media, Maria's teenage daughter volunteered. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. I can make this go viral. Over the next week, we became a media sensation. But this time, we controlled the story. Local news ran segments about our community land trust effort. Maria's daughter posted videos that got millions of views. People showed up to protest outside Horizon Properties offices. The public pressure was intense. Horizon Properties tried to paint themselves as the victims of harassment, but it backfired. They looked like heartless developers trying to displace families. 3 weeks in, they dropped the injunction. 2 days later, they agreed to sell to Daniel's land trust proposal. The day the sale closed, We had a party in Walter's apartment. It was too small for everyone, but we crammed in anyway. 30 people celebrating in a space meant for maybe 10. Patricia brought the final documents. As of this morning, these 3 buildings are owned by the Heights Community Land Trust. You're not tenants anymore. You're members. You control your own housing. The cheers were deafening. Daniel was there, but he stayed in the background. When people thanked him, he deflected credit to Patricia, to the community organizers, to everyone but himself. I found him later on Walter's tiny balcony, looking out over the neighborhood. "You did it," I said. "We did it," he corrected. "I just provided money. You all did the real work. It was your idea. It was Patricia's idea. I just asked the right person for help." He smiled. "That's what I've learned. I don't have to have all the answers. I just have to listen to people who do and support their work." I felt something warm in my chest. Pride, maybe. Or hope. Daniel had actually changed. Not performatively, not temporarily, but genuinely. "So what now?" I asked. "You've stepped down from your company, you've created this land trust, you've been making soup every Sunday. What's next for Daniel Whitmore?" He was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, I don't know. For the first time in my adult life, I don't have a 5-year plan. I don't have metrics to hit or goals to achieve. I'm just living, being part of things instead of running them. And Grace, it feels amazing." The party continued inside. Through the window, I could see Walter teaching Mrs. Chen's grandson how to make his special soup. Maria and her husband dancing in the tiny kitchen. Mr. Johnson laughing at someone's joke. This was what community looked like. This was what mattered. But as I stood there feeling hopeful for the first time in months, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk about Daniel Whitmore. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., Metro Coffee on 5th. Come alone. You need to know the truth about what he's really doing." I felt ice in my stomach. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked, noticing my expression. I looked at the text again. Looked at Daniel. Looked at the celebration inside. "Yeah, I lied. Everything's fine." But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the edge of something. That the happiness I was feeling was about to be shattered. The next morning, I went to Metro Coffee alone. A woman in her 40s was waiting in a corner booth. Professional clothes, expensive briefcase, the look of someone who worked in corporate law or finance. "Grace Thompson," she asked as I approached. "Who are you?" "My name is Rebecca Chin. I'm the new CEO of Whitmore Technologies, the company Daniel founded. We need to talk about what Daniel's been doing with company resources." I sat down slowly. "What do you mean?" Rebecca pulled out a folder. "Daniel may have stepped down as CEO, but he's still the majority shareholder, which means his actions still affect the company. And in the past 6 months, he's liquidated over $400 million in stock. Do you know what he's been using that money for?" "The land trust," I said. "The buildings." "Partially," Rebecca said. "But not just your buildings, Grace. He's been buying properties all over the city. 12 buildings in the past 3 months. All in low-income neighborhoods. All being converted to land trusts or affordable housing cooperatives." I felt confused. "That sounds good." "It's financially insane," Rebecca said flatly. "He's hemorrhaging money on projects with no return on investment. He's destabilizing the company. Our stock price has dropped 30% because shareholders are worried he'll liquidate everything for his housing charity project." "So stop him," I said. "He's not CEO anymore. We're trying. The board is planning to force him to sell his shares. But Grace, here's what you need to understand. Daniel's not doing this out of pure altruism. He's doing it because he's obsessed. Obsessed with proving he can change, obsessed with earning redemption, obsessed with being seen as a good person." She leaned forward. "He's using poor communities as his therapy project. He's not actually helping, he's using you to make himself feel better about being rich. And when this crashes, when he's forced to sell everything, all those land trusts and housing projects will collapse. Including yours." I felt sick. "You're lying." "Am I?" Rebecca pushed documents across the table. Financial records. Meeting minutes. Communications between board members. It was all there. Daniel's spending was unsustainable. The board was planning to force him out completely. And when they did, the funding for all his projects would disappear. Your land trust is built on sand, Rebecca said quietly. The moment the board succeeds in removing Daniel's control, those buildings revert to regular ownership. They'll be sold to cover his debts. And you'll be right back where you started, facing eviction. Why are you telling me this? Because I actually care about those communities, Rebecca said. Not as therapy, not as redemption, but because housing displacement is a real problem. And Daniel's reckless, emotional approach is making it worse. He's giving people false hope that will be crushed when reality hits. She stood up. I'm offering you a way out. Work with me. Help me convince Daniel to structure these projects sustainably. Real funding, real planning, real long-term stability. Not this emotional binge spending that's going to collapse in 6 months. And if I don't? Then watch what you've built crumble, Rebecca said. And know that it's because Daniel Whitmore cared more about feeling like a good person than actually being one. She left, and I sat there with the documents, my mind reeling. Was everything Daniel had done just performative? Was Rebecca right that he was using us? Or was this the board trying to stop something genuinely good because it wasn't profitable? I didn't know who to trust anymore. And the worst part was, I had to figure it out fast. Because if Rebecca was right, my entire community was about to lose everything again. Only this time, it would hurt even more. Because this time, we'd believe things could actually change. I didn't tell anyone about Rebecca's meeting for 3 days. I kept the documents hidden in my apartment, pulling them out late at night after Jasmine went to bed, trying to make sense of the numbers and legal language. The documents were damning. Daniel had liquidated $460 million in stock over 6 months. He'd personally guaranteed loans for 17 different housing projects across the city. He'd put up his personal assets as collateral for nonprofit organizations he'd created practically overnight. And according to Rebecca's financial projections, it was all going to collapse in less than 4 months. The land trust for our buildings looked secure on paper. But buried in the fine print was a clause I'd missed. If the primary funding entity, Daniel's personal foundation, defaulted on its obligations, the properties would revert to a backup ownership structure. And that backup was a shell corporation that, according to Rebecca's documents, was controlled by Whitmore Technologies. Meaning if Daniel went down, the board could seize our buildings to cover his debts. I felt sick every time I looked at the papers. On the 4th day, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Patricia Johnson. Patricia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course, Grace. What's wrong? Is our land trust secure? Legally, financially, actually secure? Or is it dependent on Daniel's personal finances staying stable? There was a pause. A long pause. Grace, who have you been talking to? Answer the question. Please. Patricia sighed. The land trust structure itself is sound. But yes, there are complications. Daniel set everything up very quickly. Some of the funding mechanisms are tied to his personal assets in ways that aren't ideal long-term. I've been working with him to restructure, to make everything more independent, but it takes time. How much time? 6 to 8 months, ideally. We need to establish separate endowments, secure independent funding sources, restructure the debt obligations. We don't have 6 to 8 months, I interrupted. His board is planning to force him out. They're going to seize his assets. Patricia, what happens to our buildings when that happens? Another pause. Longer this time. I don't know, Patricia admitted, and I could hear the fear in her voice. Grace, I've been trying to get Daniel to slow down, to build things more carefully. But he's been moving so fast, trying to help so many people at once. He won't listen. He thinks he has time to fix the structural issues later. But he doesn't have time. No, Patricia said quietly. He doesn't. I hung up and sat in my apartment, staring at the walls. Everything we'd built, everything we'd hoped for, was built on unstable ground. And my community had no idea. That Sunday, I watched Daniel make soup with Walter, and I felt anger building in my chest. He was smiling, laughing at one of Mr. Johnson's jokes, completely oblivious to the disaster he'd created. Or was he oblivious? Had he known all along that this was unsustainable? Had he built us a dream knowing it would collapse? After the soup deliveries, I pulled him aside. We need to talk. Now. Not here. Something in my tone made his smile disappear. Okay. Where? The park. The same bench where this all started. We walked in silence. It was late afternoon, the park mostly empty except for a few joggers and dog walkers. We sat on the same bench where, months ago, I'd told him about Walter and real wealth and what actually mattered. I met with Rebecca Chen, I said. Daniel's whole body went rigid. When? 4 days ago. She showed me everything, Daniel. The stock liquidation, the debt obligations, the funding structures that tie our land trust to your personal assets. She showed me what happens when your board forces you out. Rebecca doesn't understand. She understands finances, I cut him off. She understands that you've built 17 different housing projects on unsustainable funding. She understands that when you go down, you're taking all of us with you. I'm not going down. The board can't force me out. I'm the majority shareholder. For now, I said. But she showed me the legal strategies they're planning. Shareholder lawsuits, fiduciary duty claims, competency challenges. Daniel, they have lawyers who do nothing but figure out how to remove founders from their own companies. You think you can fight that? He was quiet, staring at his hands. You lied to me, I said, and my voice cracked. You said this was about giving us tools to save ourselves. You said we'd have real security. But you built everything on sand. You built it on your personal fortune, which you knew was under threat. You gave us hope knowing it might all come crashing down. I didn't lie, Daniel said quietly. I genuinely believed I could make it work. I still believe I can. Belief isn't enough. You're gambling with people's lives, with their homes, with their futures. And you didn't even tell us we were part of the bet. I was going to fix it, Daniel said, and there was desperation in his voice now. Patricia and I have been working on restructuring everything. We just needed more time. Time you don't have, I said. Daniel, in 4 months, maybe less, your board is going to move against you. And when they do, what happens to the 150 families living in buildings you promised were secure? I won't let that happen. How? How exactly are you going to stop it? He didn't have an answer. We sat in silence, and I felt tears building behind my eyes. I trusted you, I said quietly. After everything, after all your mistakes, I actually started to trust you. I thought you'd changed. I thought you'd learned. But you're still the same person you were at the beginning. You're still making decisions based on what makes you feel good without thinking about the consequences for everyone else. That's not fair, isn't it? I turned to face him. Be honest, Daniel. Why did you really do all this? Why the land trusts? Why the housing projects? Why helping my community? Because I wanted to make a difference. Because I wanted to use my wealth for good. Because you wanted to feel like a good person, I interrupted. Because you were lonely and broken, and you found a community that made you feel valuable. And instead of just being part of it, instead of just showing up and helping in sustainable ways, you had to make it big. You had to save everyone. You had to be the hero. The words were harsh but true, and I could see them landing on Daniel like physical blows. You're using us, I continued. Maybe not consciously, maybe not maliciously, but you're using us just like Rebecca said. Our community, our struggles, our lives, they're all part of your redemption narrative. And when that narrative collapses, we're the ones who'll pay the price. What do you want me to do? Daniel asked, and his voice was raw with emotion. I don't know, I admitted. But I know what you need to stop doing. Stop making promises you can't keep. Stop building dreams on unstable foundations. Stop treating community work like a business venture where you can move fast and break things. So I should just give up? Let the board win? Let all those families lose their housing? I'm saying you should have thought about sustainability before you made promises to 17 different communities. I'm saying you should have listened to Patricia when she told you to slow down. I'm saying you should have been honest with us about the risks. Daniel stood up, pacing in front of the bench. So what now? You want me to tell everyone that their housing security is an illusion? That in 4 months they might lose everything? That's going to help. People deserve the truth, I said. They deserve to know what they're facing so they can prepare. So they can make their own decisions about their futures. The truth will destroy everything we've built. You've already destroyed it, I said. You just haven't admitted it yet. Daniel looked at me with an expression of complete devastation. I was trying to help. I know, I said softly. But intention isn't enough. You have to actually help, not just try. And right now, you're making things worse. He sat back down on the bench, his head in his hands. We sat in silence for a long time. Rebecca offered me a deal, I said finally. She wants me to help convince you to restructure everything. Work with the board, put sustainable systems in place, build things that will last instead of things that feel good. You're considering it. Of course I'm considering it. Because Rebecca might be ruthless and profit-focused, but at least she's honest about it. At least she's not pretending community work is simple or that money alone solves problems. She doesn't care about people, Daniel said. She cares about the company. About profits and shareholders and quarterly earnings. If you work with her, she'll turn everything into business calculations. People will become numbers on spreadsheets. And your approach has been so much better? I challenged. You've been treating people like ingredients in your redemption recipe. At least Rebecca's honest about seeing us as numbers. You've been lying to yourself and us about what this really is. Daniel flinched. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Daniel. That's something poor people learn early. We don't get to make mistakes and have safety nets catch us. We don't get to experiment with our futures because we think we have good intentions. We live with consequences in ways you never have. I stood up, suddenly exhausted. I'm going to talk to Walter. To the community. We're going to figure out what to do as a group. Because that's how community actually works. Not one person making decisions for everyone else, even if they think they're helping. Grace, please. No, I said firmly. You've done enough. Now it's time for you to step back and let us handle this. I walked away, leaving him sitting on that bench looking broken and lost. That night, I called an emergency community meeting. I brought the documents Rebecca had given me. I brought Patricia on speakerphone to explain the technical details. And I told everyone the truth. The truth about the funding structures. The truth about the board's plans. The truth about how our supposedly secure housing was tied to Daniel's personal fortune. The truth about how we might lose everything in a few months. The reactions were what I expected. Anger. Fear. Betrayal. I knew we couldn't trust him, Mr. Johnson said bitterly. Rich people don't actually help. They just make themselves feel better and leave us with the mess. We should sue him, Maria's husband said. He lied to us. He made promises he couldn't keep. Suing him won't give us housing, Maria pointed out. It'll just make lawyers rich. Mrs. Chin was crying quietly. I thought we were safe. I told my son we were safe. Walter had been silent through the whole meeting. Now he spoke. We're angry, he said. And we have a right to be. Daniel made promises he couldn't guarantee. He moved too fast and built on unstable ground. He let his need to be a hero override careful planning. People nodded, the anger in the room palpable. But, Walter continued, we also have choices to make. We can spend our energy being angry at Daniel, or we can spend it protecting ourselves. We can focus on blame, or we can focus on solutions. What solutions? Mr. Johnson demanded. The whole thing is collapsing. Maybe, Walter said. Or maybe we work with Rebecca. Maybe we restructure everything with actual sustainability. Maybe we save what we can and learn from what we can't. You want us to work with the corporation? Maria asked, surprised. Work with the same people who are trying to evict us? I want us to work with whoever can actually help, Walter said. Rebecca Chin might be profit-focused, but Patricia says she's competent. She understands sustainable finance. She might be able to save some of what Daniel built, even if it looks different from what we hoped. Or she might dismantle everything and leave us with nothing, Mr. Johnson countered. That's possible too, Walter admitted. But doing nothing definitely leads to collapse. At least working with Rebecca gives us a chance. The room erupted into arguments. Some people wanted to trust Rebecca. Others wanted nothing to do with Whitmore Technologies. Some wanted to sue Daniel. Others just wanted to start looking for new apartments before the inevitable crash. I sat there listening to my community fracture, and I felt something inside me break. This was what Daniel's help had created. Not security, but chaos. Not community strength, but division. Not sustainable change, but false hope that was now imploding. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. Please let me try to fix it. I didn't respond. The meeting went until midnight. We couldn't reach consensus. Finally, Walter suggested we table the discussion for 3 days. Give people time to think, to process their emotions, to consider the options. People left angry and scared. The warmth and trust that had defined our community for years was replaced by suspicion and division. As I was leaving, Walter pulled me aside. "This isn't your fault," he said quietly. "I brought Daniel into our lives. I vouched for him. I encouraged people to trust him. You are trying to help him become a better person. That's not wrong. His choices are his, not yours. But our community is paying the price for his choices." Walter nodded slowly. "Yes, that's what happens when people with power make mistakes. The powerless pay the price. It's not right, but it's reality. So what do? We survive," Walter said simply. "Like we always have. We adapt, we help each other, we figure out a way forward. With or without Daniel. With or without Rebecca. We've survived worse than this." I wanted to believe him. But for the first time since I'd known Walter, I wasn't sure he was right. Over the next 2 days, I watched my community divide. Some people started packing, assuming the worst. Others clung to hope that somehow things would work out. A few started meeting with Rebecca's representatives, exploring what working with Whitmore Technologies might mean. Daniel kept texting, calling, leaving messages. I ignored all of them. On the 3rd day, Patricia called me. "Grace, I need to tell you something. Daniel's planning something drastic." My stomach dropped. "What?" "He's going to announce that he's selling his entire stake in Whitmore Technologies. All of it. He's planning to use the money to fully fund all 17 housing projects with independent endowments that can't be touched by the board or anyone else." Can he do that? Technically, yes. But Grace, if he sells his stake, he loses all control over the company he built. He loses his voice in how it's run. He loses everything he spent 15 years creating. And the market reaction will be severe. His stock will sell at a significant discount because everyone will know he's desperate. How much will he lose? "Billions," Patricia said quietly. "He'll go from being one of the richest people in the country to being comfortable, I guess. Still wealthy by normal standards, but not billionaire wealthy." And Grace, I don't think he's thought this through. I think he's making an emotional decision based on guilt and desperation. When is he planning to announce this? Tomorrow morning. I'm calling because I think you might be the only person he'll listen to. If you tell him not to do this, he might actually stop and think. Why would he listen to me? I haven't spoken to him in 3 days. Because he cares what you think more than anyone else, Patricia said. Please, Grace. I'm not saying don't let him help. I'm saying don't let him destroy himself out of guilt. There are better ways to fix this. I hung up and sat in my apartment, my mind racing. Daniel was about to sell everything, destroy everything he'd built, make himself financially vulnerable, all to fix the mess he'd created. It was noble and stupid and exactly the kind of impulsive decision that had gotten us into this situation in the first place. But it would also save our housing. Would actually, genuinely save it. The question was whether I should let him do it. Whether I should let a billionaire sacrifice his empire to fix the false hope he'd given us. Whether that was justice or just more chaos. I looked at my phone. At the dozens of unanswered messages from Daniel. At the text Patricia had sent with the time and location of his press conference tomorrow. I had 12 hours to decide what to do. 12 hours to figure out if I was going to let Daniel Whitmore save us by destroying himself. Or if I was going to stop him and force us all to find another way forward. I called Jasmine into the living room. Baby, I need your advice on something. She sat down next to me on our old couch, the same couch we'd had since she was 5 years old. My brilliant, almost graduated daughter who'd grown up watching me struggle and sacrifice and fight for every inch of stability we had. I told her everything. Daniel, the land trust, Rebecca, the board, the impending collapse, Daniel's plan to sell everything. So, what do you think I should do? I asked when I finished. Jasmine was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that stopped me cold. Mom, I think you need to ask yourself what this is really about. Is it about the housing? Or is it about Daniel? What do you mean? I mean, you've been angry at him for 3 days. Not just disappointed, angry. The way you get when someone you care about hurts you. Not the way you get when a landlord or a system lets you down. The way you get when it's personal. I started to protest, but she held up her hand. I've watched you these past months, she said. I've seen how you light up when you talk about the conversations you have with him. How you check your phone to see if he's texted. How you defend him when other people in the building are skeptical. Mom, I think you have feelings for him. Real feelings. And I think that's making this whole situation more complicated than it needs to be. I sat there stunned. Because she was right. Somewhere along the way, between the late-night conversations and the soup Sundays and watching Daniel genuinely try to change, I'd developed feelings for him. Real, deep, complicated feelings that I'd been refusing to acknowledge. And now those feelings were tangled up with everything else. With my anger at his mistakes, with my fear for my community, with my confusion about the right path forward. What do I do? I asked my daughter, feeling lost. I think you go to that press conference tomorrow, Jasmine said. And you figure out what you actually want. Not what's best for the community, Walter and the others can figure that out. But what you want for yourself, with Daniel. And then you decide based on that truth, not on pretending your feelings don't exist. She hugged me and went back to her room, leaving me alone with a truth I hadn't wanted to face. I had feelings for Daniel Whitmore. And tomorrow, I had to decide if those feelings changed anything about what I needed to do. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room until 3 a.m., staring at the documents spread across my coffee table. Financial projections. Legal contracts. Rebecca's cold, calculated analysis of everything that was about to collapse. And underneath it all, my own confused heart. Jasmine was right. I had feelings for Daniel. Deep, complicated, terrifying feelings that made every decision feel impossible. Because if I let him sell his company to save us, was I letting him sacrifice himself out of love? Out of guilt? Out of some desperate need to prove he was worthy of redemption? And what did it say about me that I was even considering letting him do it? At 4 a.m., I finally gave up on sleep and went for a walk. The streets were empty, the city quiet in that strange pre-dawn stillness. I found myself at the park, sitting on our bench, watching the sky slowly lighten. My phone rang. Daniel. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Grace. His voice was rough, like he hadn't slept either. Please don't hang up. I wasn't going to. Patricia called you, didn't she? About the press conference. Yes. Silence. Then, are you going to try to stop me? I don't know, I said honestly. Daniel, why are you doing this? Really doing this? Because I made promises I can't keep any other way. Because 17 communities are depending on housing security I gave them. Because I'd rather lose my company than lose my word. That sounds noble, but it's not the whole truth, is it? He was quiet for a long moment. No. So tell me the truth. I heard him take a shaky breath. Because for the first time in my adult life, I care about something more than business success. I care about those families. I care about Walter and Maria and Mrs. Chin and everyone in your building. I care about the kids who get to stay in their schools, the elderly people who get to age in place, the single mothers who don't have to uproot their lives. He paused. And I care about you, Grace. I care what you think of me. And I can't live with myself if I let everyone down because I was too impulsive, too reckless, too desperate to be a hero. My heart was pounding. Daniel. I know I messed up, he continued. I know I built everything too fast, promised too much, didn't think through the long-term sustainability. But I can fix it. This sale will fix it. Every housing project will have an independent endowment. No one will be vulnerable to board decisions or stock market fluctuations or my personal mistakes ever again. At the cost of everything you built. It's just a company, Grace. Just money and prestige and power I never really needed anyway. What's it worth compared to 150 families having secure housing? It's your life's work, I said. 15 years of building something from nothing. You're willing to just throw that away. I'm willing to trade it for something that actually matters. I closed my eyes, feeling tears on my cheeks. And what happens to you after? You sell everything, you set up these endowments, then what? You're just some guy with a nice bank account and no purpose. I'll figure it out. Maybe I'll go back to school. Learn community development properly instead of just throwing money at problems. Maybe I'll get a regular job somewhere, work my way up like a normal person. Maybe I'll finally learn what it's like to live without billions of dollars insulating me from reality. You're romanticizing poverty, I said sharply. You think losing your money will make you noble or authentic or real. But Daniel, being poor isn't a spiritual journey. It's grinding and exhausting and soul-crushing. Don't throw away your resources because you have some fantasy about simple living. That's not what I'm doing. Isn't it? You're making another impulsive decision based on emotion instead of careful planning. You're doing exactly what got us into this mess, just in a different direction. So what should I do? His voice cracked. Tell me, Grace. What's the right answer here? And that's when I realized I didn't know. I had no idea what the right choice was. Let him sell everything and save our housing but destroy himself in the process? Stop him and force us to work with Rebecca, potentially losing everything anyway but at least preserving some of what Daniel had built? Find some third option that I couldn't even see yet? I don't know, I admitted. I don't have the answers, Daniel. I'm just a waitress trying to protect her community. I'm not qualified to tell billionaires how to manage their assets. You're not just a waitress, Daniel said quietly. You're the wisest person I've ever met. You're someone who actually understands what matters. That's why I need your advice. That's why I'll listen if you tell me not to do this. The weight of that responsibility crushed down on me. He was actually going to let me decide his entire future. Based on what I said in the next few minutes, he would either destroy his company or find another way forward. The press conference is at 10 a.m.? I asked. Yes. Downtown, the Meridian Hotel. I'll be there, I said. But Daniel, I can't promise I'll know what to say. I can't promise I'll have the right answer. I trust you, he said simply. We hung up, and I sat on that bench as the sun rose, trying to figure out what to do with the trust he'd just placed in me. At 7 a.m., I went home, showered, put on my best clothes. The nice dress I saved for job interviews and important occasions. The shoes Jasmine had bought me for my birthday. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. When had I become someone a billionaire trusted to make life-changing decisions? When had I become someone whose opinion mattered in corporate press conferences? When had I become someone who had feelings for a man from a completely different world? Jasmine knocked on my door. Mom? You okay? I don't know what to do, baby. She came in and sat on my bed. Can I tell you what I think? Please. I think Daniel selling his company is a beautiful gesture. It's noble and self-sacrificing and exactly the kind of dramatic romantic gesture you see in movies. But Mom, life isn't a movie. And beautiful gestures don't always lead to good outcomes. She picked up one of Rebecca's financial documents. If Daniel sells, yes, the housing projects get funded. But he also loses all his power to do good in other ways. He loses his platform, his influence, his ability to change how businesses operate. One grand gesture versus years of systemic change. Which actually helps more people. I hadn't thought about it that way. And Mom, if he sells everything for you, for your community, what does that do to your relationship? You'll always know he sacrificed everything. That's a huge burden to carry. Every time things are hard, every time he struggles, you'll wonder if it's your fault for letting him do it. We don't have a relationship, I protested weakly. Jasmine gave me a look. Mom, come on. You have feelings for him. He clearly has feelings for you. The only question is whether you're going to acknowledge it or keep pretending it doesn't exist. She stood up. Go to the press conference. Listen to what he has to say. But Mom, make the decision based on what's actually best, not on guilt or obligation or fear. And maybe, just maybe, talk to him about what's happening between you two. Because I think that's the real issue here, not the money or the housing or the company. She left, and I sat there processing her words. At 9:30, I took the bus downtown. I couldn't afford a cab, and the irony of taking public transportation to a billionaire's press conference wasn't lost on me. The Meridian Hotel was exactly what I expected. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, the kind of quiet luxury that whispered old money and power. I felt completely out of place in my interview dress and department store shoes. The press conference was in the grand ballroom. I could see reporters setting up, cameras being positioned, people in expensive suits talking in clusters. The whole corporate machinery preparing to broadcast Daniel's announcement to the world. I found Patricia near the back of the room. Grace, thank God you're here, she said, pulling me aside. Have you talked to him? Is he going through with it? I don't know. Where is he? Green room, preparing his statement. Grace, I need you to understand something. If he does this, if he sells his stake, the vultures will circle. His stock will sell at a 30 to 40% discount because everyone will know he's desperate. He'll lose billions in value just from the market reaction. And the company will likely be acquired by someone worse than Rebecca within a year. Someone who will dismantle everything good he built there. So, what's the alternative? Work with Rebecca. Restructure the housing projects sustainably. It'll mean some of them get scaled back or shut down. It'll mean hard choices about which communities get helped and which don't. But it preserves his platform to do more good long-term. And our building? I asked. Our community? Do we get scaled back or shut down? Patricia hesitated. I don't know. Rebecca's team is still running the numbers. Some projects are more financially viable than others. Yours is one of the stronger ones, but there are no guarantees. So that was the choice. Daniel's grand gesture that guaranteed our housing but destroyed his future impact. Or Rebecca's calculated approach that might save some projects but could easily sacrifice ours. I need to talk to him, I said. Patricia led me through a maze of hallways to a small room where Daniel was sitting alone, staring at a prepared statement. He looked up when I came in, and the hope and fear in his eyes nearly broke me. Grace. Everyone out, I said to Patricia and the PR people hovering nearby. I need to talk to him alone. They left, and suddenly it was just the two of us in that quiet room with 10 minutes until he was supposed to walk out and announce a decision that would change everything. I practiced what I was going to say, I told him. I had this whole speech about responsibility and sustainability and thinking long-term. About how grand gestures feel good, but sustainable change matters more. About how you needed to work with Rebecca even though it meant hard choices. But, Daniel prompted. But then I realized I was giving you advice based on what I thought I should say. Not on what I actually believe. I sat down next to him. Daniel, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Anything. Are you doing this because it's the right thing to do? Or are you doing it because you have feelings for me and you think this is how you prove you're worthy? He looked stunned. Because if it's the second one, you need to stop. You can't sacrifice your entire life's work to impress me or earn my approval or prove you've changed. That's not love. That's just another form of using people to make yourself feel better. It's not just about you, Daniel said quietly. Though yes, you're part of it. I do have feelings for you, Grace. Deep feelings that I don't entirely understand. But I'm not doing this to impress you. I'm doing it because I made promises I can't keep any other way. Can't you? Really can't? Or is selling everything just easier than doing the hard work of restructuring sustainably? He flinched. That's not fair. Answer the question. Daniel stood up, pacing the small room. You want the truth? The complete truth? Yes. I'm terrified, he admitted. I'm terrified of working with Rebecca because it means admitting I failed. It means watching some of these projects get shut down, watching families lose housing because I promised them security I couldn't deliver. It means facing the consequences of my mistakes in slow motion instead of one grand gesture that makes it all better immediately. He turned to face me. Selling everything is easier. You're right about that. It's a clean break. I save everyone, I lose everything. I get to be the noble billionaire who sacrificed it all for the greater good. It's the hero ending. But it's not sustainable, I said. No, he admitted. It's not. Rebecca's approach is better long-term. Harder, more painful, less satisfying, but better. I know that intellectually. But emotionally, I just want to fix everything I broke, even if it means breaking myself in the process. I stood up and walked over to him. We were standing close, closer than we'd ever been, and I could see the exhaustion and fear and desperate hope in his eyes. Daniel, I need to tell you something. And it's going to be hard to hear. Okay. You can't fix everything. You can't save everyone. You're one person with resources, not a god who can solve systemic problems through force of will and money. Some of those housing projects are going to fail. Some families are going to lose their homes despite your best efforts. That's reality. I saw tears forming in his eyes. But I continued, that doesn't mean you should give up. It doesn't mean you should destroy your platform to save one set of people. It means you need to make hard choices. Work with Rebecca. Save what you can. Build things properly this time, even if it's smaller and slower. And accept that you can't be everyone's hero. What about your community? He asked. What about Walter and Maria and Mrs. Chin? What about you? I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe Rebecca's restructuring saves our building. Maybe it doesn't. But Daniel, you can't make this decision based on me. You can't sacrifice your company because you're afraid of disappointing me specifically. But I care about you, he said, and his voice broke. I care about you more than I've cared about anyone in years. The thought of letting you down, of watching your community lose housing because of my mistakes, it's killing me. I know, I said softly. But Daniel, if you do this, if you sell everything to save us, our relationship, whatever it is or could be, starts with you sacrificing everything for me. That's not healthy. That's not sustainable. That's not love, that's martyrdom. I took his hands. They were shaking. I have feelings for you too, I admitted. Feelings that scare me because of how different our worlds are. Feelings that make all of this so much more complicated. But if we're going to explore those feelings, if we're going to see what this could be, it has to start from a place of equality. Not you saving me. Not you proving your worth through sacrifice. Just two people who care about each other trying to build something real. So what do I do? Daniel asked. Tell me what to do, Grace. I can't, I said. This has to be your choice. Your decision about your future. Not based on me, not based on guilt, but based on what you actually think is right. There was a knock on the door. Mr. Whitmore, 5 minutes, someone called. Daniel looked at me at the door, back at me. If I work with Rebecca, if I restructure instead of selling, I can't guarantee your building will be saved. I know. You could lose everything. I've lost everything before, I said. I survived it. I'll survive it again if I have to. How can you be so calm about that? Because I've learned something you're still learning, I said. Real security doesn't come from buildings or money or guaranteed outcomes. It comes from knowing you can handle whatever happens. It comes from community that supports each other through anything. It comes from trusting yourself to survive and adapt and keep going no matter what. Another knock. 3 minutes, Mr. Whitmore. Daniel pulled me into a hug. It was sudden and desperate, and I could feel him shaking. I don't want to lose you, he whispered. I just found you. I just started understanding what actually matters. I don't want to make a choice that costs me that. You won't lose me, I said. Not if you make the right choice for the right reasons. But if you sacrifice everything out of fear or guilt or desperation, then yes, you'll lose me. Because that's not the man I have feelings for. He pulled back, looking at me intently. Who is the man you have feelings for? The man who shows up every Sunday to make soup. The man who listens to Walter and actually learns. The man who makes mistakes but tries to do better. The man who's learning that being rich doesn't mean having all the answers. That's who I care about. Not the billionaire hero making grand gestures. 1 minute, Mr. Whitmore. Daniel looked at the door, then back at me. Will you be out there? When I make the announcement? Yes. No matter what I decide? No matter what you decide. He kissed my forehead gently, then stepped back. Thank you. For being honest. For calling me out. For caring enough to tell me hard truths instead of comfortable lies. That's what people who care about each other do, I said. He smiled, but it was shaky. I love you. I know it's fast and complicated and probably crazy, but I love you, Grace Thompson. Before I could respond, the door opened. The PR team hustled him out toward the ballroom. I stood there, alone in that small room, my heart pounding. He loved me. Daniel Whitmore loved me. And in about 2 minutes, he was going to make a decision that would determine the future of 17 communities, his entire company, and whatever was growing between us. I walked out to the ballroom and found a spot in the back. Reporters were packed in, cameras ready. I saw Rebecca in the front row, her expression carefully neutral. Patricia was off to the side, looking sick with worry. Daniel walked out to the podium. He looked small up there despite his expensive suit, despite the dozens of cameras pointed at him. He looked human and uncertain, and nothing like the confident billionaire I'd first met months ago. Thank you all for coming, he began, his voice steady despite everything. I've called this press conference to make an announcement about my role at Whitmore Technologies and my ongoing housing initiatives. The room was silent, everyone waiting. Daniel looked down at his prepared statement. The one that announced he was selling everything. The grand gesture. The hero ending. Then he looked up at me. Our eyes met across the crowded room. And I saw him make his choice. Daniel set the prepared statement aside. I'm not going to read what I planned to say, he told the room full of reporters. Because what I planned to say was based on emotion and guilt, not on what's actually best for the communities I've been trying to help. I saw Rebecca sit up straighter. Patricia's hand went to her mouth. 6 months ago, I stepped down as CEO of Whitmore Technologies because I realized I didn't understand what actually mattered in life. I'd built a company worth billions, but I had no real relationships, no community, no purpose beyond making money. I was successful and completely empty. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I met a woman who taught me about real wealth, about community and connection, and what it means to actually help people instead of just throwing money at problems. And I got excited. Too excited. I started 17 housing projects in 6 months. I made promises to communities across the city. I thought my money and good intentions were enough. Daniel's voice was stronger now, more honest. They weren't. I moved too fast, built on unstable foundations, and created a situation where the very people I was trying to help are now at risk. That's on me. That's my failure. And I need to own it instead of making another grand gesture to feel better about myself. So, what are you announcing? A reporter called out. I'm announcing that I'm working with our current CEO, Rebecca Chin, to restructure all housing initiatives properly. With sustainable funding, realistic timelines, and actual community input. Not me deciding what's best for people, but working with communities to build what they actually need. The room erupted with questions. Daniel held up his hand. This means some projects will be scaled back. Some may be closed entirely. Decisions will be made based on financial viability and community need, not on my emotional attachment or guilt. It means I'm accepting that I can't save everyone, that I can't fix systemic housing problems through force of will, and that sustainable change is more important than feeling like a hero. I felt tears on my cheeks. He'd listened. He'd actually listened. I'm also announcing that I'm returning as executive chairman of Whitmore Technologies, working alongside Rebecca to reshape how our company operates. Not abandoning the community principles I've learned, but implementing them properly, sustainably, thoughtfully. Rebecca stood up. Mr. Whitmore and I will be taking questions together. This restructuring represents a partnership between community values and business sustainability. Between doing good and doing it right. She walked up to join him at the podium, and I saw something pass between them. Not friendship exactly, but mutual respect. Understanding that they needed each other, his values and her competence, to actually help people instead of just making themselves feel better. The press conference continued for another 30 minutes. Reporters asked about specific housing projects, about financial details, about what this meant for Whitmore Technologies' future. Daniel and Rebecca answered together, presenting a united front that was far more convincing than either of them alone would have been. Finally, it ended. Daniel looked exhausted but relieved. He'd made the hard choice, the sustainable choice, the choice that didn't feel as good as the grand gesture but was actually right. I slipped out before he could find me. I needed to process what had just happened. Needed to figure out what it meant for my community, for me, for whatever was growing between us. I took the bus home, watching the city roll past the windows. When I got to my building, Walter was sitting on the front steps. You were at the press conference, he said. It wasn't a question. How did you know? Because you're wearing your interview dress, and you left at 9 a.m. on a weekday. Didn't take a detective. He patted the step beside him. Sit. Tell me what happened. I sat and told him everything. Daniel's original plan to sell everything. Our conversation in the green room. His decision to work with Rebecca instead. The restructuring that might save some projects and close others. So we might still lose our housing, Walter said when I finished. Yes, but it'll be based on actual sustainability instead of one man's guilt. Yes. Walter nodded slowly. That's better. Harder to accept, but better. False hope is worse than honest uncertainty. I'm scared, Walter. Scared of what this means for everyone. Scared of having to tell people they might lose their homes after all. Scared of, I stopped. Scared of what? Walter prompted gently. Scared of what happens between me and Daniel if our building is one of the ones that gets closed. How do you build a relationship with someone when their decision might cost you your home? Walter was quiet for a long moment. Grace, do you love him? The question caught me off guard. I have feelings for him. Strong feelings. But love? I don't know if I can love someone from such a different world. Someone whose choices have so much power over my life. That's not what I asked. I asked if you love him, not if it's practical or smart or easy. Do you love him? I thought about Daniel. About watching him chop vegetables in Walter's tiny kitchen. About his genuine devastation when he realized he'd broken trust. About the way he actually listened and tried to change. About how he looked at me like I was the most important person in the world. Yes, I admitted quietly. I think I do love him. Then the question isn't whether you can build a relationship despite the housing situation, Walter said. The question is whether you can love him regardless of what happens. Love him if our building gets saved. Love him if it doesn't. Love him for who he is, not for what he can give you or protect you from. That's hard. Love usually is, Walter said. Easy love isn't worth much. It's the hard love, the love that survives difficult choices and uncertain outcomes, that's worth having. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Can we talk? Please. I showed it to Walter. Go, he said. Talk to him. Figure out what you two are actually doing here. The housing will work out or it won't. But Grace, don't throw away something real because you're scared of being hurt. When did you get so wise about romance? I asked. Walter smiled. I was married for 20 years to the love of my life. I know a little something about building relationships that last. And I know that you can't build something real if you're always protecting yourself from potential pain. I hugged him and went inside to change out of my interview dress. Then I texted Daniel back, meet me at the park. Our bench. 1 hour. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in the same spot where we'd had so many important conversations. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. You made the right choice, I said as I sat down beside him. Did I? Because Rebecca's team spent the afternoon running numbers and Grace, it doesn't look good for your building. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Your building needs significant repairs. The foundation has issues, the plumbing is ancient, the electrical system doesn't meet code. To bring it up to standard would cost more than the property is worth. Rebecca's recommending we close that project and use the resources to strengthen the others. I felt like I'd been punched. So we're losing our homes anyway. Not necessarily. Rebecca has another proposal. There's a building 3 blocks away, newer construction, better condition. It's currently market-rate apartments, but the owner is looking to sell. We could convert that to affordable housing, move everyone from your building there. Better apartments, actually up to code, more sustainable long-term. But it's not our building, I said. It's not our home. I know. Daniel took my hand. Grace, I'm so sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted. But the honest truth is your current building isn't safe long-term. Even without the financial issues, even if I'd done everything perfectly, that building was going to fail eventually. The landlord's been deferring maintenance for years. I sat there processing this. We were losing our home either way. The only question was whether we got relocated to something better or ended up scattered across the city, looking for whatever we could afford. What does Walter think? Daniel asked. I haven't told him yet. I came straight here. Do you want me to come with you when you tell everyone? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to face this alone, to protect my community from more disappointment. But Walter's words echoed in my head. About real love surviving difficult choices. Yes, I said. Come with me. Face this with me. Whatever happens. We walked back to my building together. Word had already spread that I'd been at the press conference. People were gathered in the common room, waiting for news. I told them everything. Daniel's decision to work with Rebecca. The restructuring plans. The problems with our building. The possibility of relocation to somewhere better. The reactions were mixed. Some people were angry that we were losing our home. Others were relieved that relocation meant we wouldn't be scattered. Mrs. Chen cried because her daughter had grown up in this building. Maria worried about moving her kids to a new neighborhood. And Walter, as always, cut through to the heart of it. Change is hard, he said. Losing our home is painful, even if the new place is better. But we're not losing each other. That's what matters. Community isn't the building. It's the people. As long as we stay together, we're still a community. But will we stay together? Mr. Johnson asked. Or will some people decide they don't want to move? Will we lose people anyway? That's up to each of you, Daniel said. The new building has enough units for everyone currently living here. But it's your choice whether to move there or find something else. Rebecca's team will help either way: relocation assistance for those who want the new building, resources for those who want to find their own place. What about Sunday soup? Maria asked, looking at Walter. Can we keep doing that in the new building? Walter looked at the faces around him. His community. His family. Wherever we go, we take Sunday soup with us, he said firmly. Buildings change. Neighborhoods change. But what we've built together, that comes with us. If we choose to stay together. I'm in, Maria said immediately. My family will move to the new building. Me too, Mrs. Chen said quietly. One by one, people committed. To the new building. To staying together as a community. To adapting instead of breaking apart. Not everyone. 3 families decided they'd rather find their own places. One couple was moving out of the city anyway. But the core of the community, 22 families, chose to stay together. After the meeting, Daniel and I walked up to my apartment. Jasmine had gone to stay with a friend, giving us privacy. We sat on my old couch, the same couch I'd had for 15 years. The same couch where I'd held Jasmine as a baby, where we'd read books together, where I'd cried during the hardest times and celebrated during the good ones. I'm going to miss this place, I said quietly. Tell me about it, Daniel said. Tell me the memories. So I did. I told him about bringing Jasmine home from the hospital, how terrified I was that first night alone with her in this apartment. About the day she took her first steps across this living room. About Walter teaching her to read at this kitchen table. About Maria babysitting here while I worked night shifts. About every birthday party and holiday celebration and ordinary Tuesday evening that had happened in these rooms. This apartment is my daughter growing up, I said. It's every struggle and sacrifice and small victory I've had for 15 years. How do I just leave that? You don't leave it, Daniel said. You take it with you. The memories, the love, the community you built. That's not tied to this physical space. That's in you, in Jasmine, in Walter and Maria and everyone who's been part of your life here. You sound like Walter. Daniel smiled. I've been learning from the best. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Daniel said, Grace, I need to ask you something important. Okay, what are we doing here? You and me. What is this? I turned to face him. What do you want it to be? I want it to be real, he said. I want to date you properly. Take you to dinner, meet Jasmine officially as the man who's in love with her mother, integrate into your life and community. I want to build something with you. Daniel, we're from completely different worlds. We're from the same world, he interrupted. We both live in this city. We both care about community. We both want to make things better. The only difference is money, and money isn't a world. It's just a resource. It's not that simple. Why not? Give me one real reason we can't try this. I thought about all the obvious reasons. The wealth gap. The power imbalance. The complications of dating someone whose business decisions affected my community. The possibility that we'd hurt each other despite our best intentions. But then I thought about Walter's words. About hard love being worth more than easy love. About not protecting myself from potential pain at the cost of something real. Okay, I said. Okay, Daniel repeated, looking shocked. Okay, as in yes? Yes, as in let's try this. Let's date properly. Let's see if we can build something real despite all the complications and differences and ways this could go wrong. Daniel pulled me into a kiss. It was gentle and sweet and felt like coming home and venturing into the unknown all at once. When we pulled apart, he was grinning. So, Grace Thompson, will you let me take you on a proper first date? Where did you have in mind? I was thinking Mel's Diner. 3 a.m. Coffee and dry toast. But this time I sit on your side of the counter and we talk as equals, not as Billionaire and Waitress. I laughed. That's the worst date idea I've ever heard. Then you pick. Anywhere you want to go, anything you want to do. I just want to spend time with you, Grace. Get to know you beyond the crisis management and community organizing. Learn about your dreams, your fears, your favorite movies and songs. All the normal relationship stuff we've been skipping. I want to go to the community center where Patricia works, I said. I want to learn more about how land trusts actually function. I want to understand the work that went into saving what we could. Daniel looked at me with such tenderness. Most people would pick a fancy restaurant or a show or something romantic. I'm not most people. No, he agreed. You're definitely not. That's why I love you. We spent the next few hours just talking. About everything and nothing. About Jasmine's upcoming graduation and Daniel's strained relationship with his own family. About my dreams of finishing my degree and Daniel's idea of going back to school for social work or community development. About favorite foods and childhood memories and all the small details that make up a life. It felt normal. Natural. Like we'd been doing this for years instead of just starting. Around midnight, my phone rang. It was Walter. Grace, you need to come down here. Now. Something's happened. The fear in his voice sent ice through my veins. What's wrong? Just come. Bring Daniel. We ran down to Walter's apartment. The door was open. Inside, Walter was sitting with two men in suits I didn't recognize. Grace, Daniel, these are attorneys from Horizon Properties, Walter said, his voice tight. My stomach dropped. What do they want? One of the attorneys stood. We're here to inform you that Horizon Properties is filing suit against Mr. Whitmore and the Heights Community Land Trust. We're claiming breach of contract, tortious interference, and fraud. We're seeking damages of $200 million and immediate injunction preventing any relocation or property transfer. I felt the world tilt. You can't do this. The sale was completed. Everything was legal. Our legal team disagrees, the attorney said. We believe Mr. Whitmore used undue influence and misrepresentation to interfere with our legitimate business transaction. We'll be filing in court tomorrow morning. They left, leaving paperwork behind. Official legal notices that might as well have been in a foreign language for all I understood them. Daniel picked up the documents, scanning them quickly. His face went pale. This is bad, he said quietly. Grace, this is really bad. If they succeed with this suit, they could unravel everything. The land trust, the relocation plan, all of it. Can they actually win? I asked. I don't know. My lawyers will fight it, but litigation takes time. Months, maybe years. And in the meantime, everyone's in limbo. You can't move to the new building while there's an injunction. You can't stay in this building because it's not safe. You're just stuck. I sat down heavily on Walter's couch. Just when things were starting to look up. Just when we'd found a path forward. Just when I'd let myself hope. There's more, Walter said quietly. He handed me a letter. It was from our current landlord, Mr. Petrosky. He was invoking an emergency clause in our leases. The building had failed a city inspection due to the foundation issues Daniel mentioned. We had 30 days to vacate. Not 60 days like before. 30 days. We can fight that, Daniel said immediately. We can get an extension, we can. Daniel, I said quietly. Stop. Stop trying to fix everything. Just for a moment, stop. He fell silent. I looked at Walter. At the legal documents. At the eviction notice. At Daniel's desperate expression. We're going to lose our homes, I said. Aren't we? Despite everything, despite the land trust and the relocation plan, and all the work everyone put in. We're going to end up scattered anyway. No, Daniel said firmly. No, I won't let that happen. I'll buy out Horizon Properties' suit. I'll settle for whatever they want. I'll buy the new building outright and just give it to the community. Daniel, stop, I said again. Listen to yourself. You're doing it again. You're trying to throw money at the problem to make it go away. But this isn't something money can fix quickly enough. He looked devastated. So what do we do? I looked at Walter. At this man who'd been making Sunday soup for years, who'd taught me about real wealth and community, who'd survived losing everything before and rebuilt his life on connection rather than security. We survive, I said, echoing what Walter had told me weeks ago. We help each other. We find temporary places to stay while the legal stuff gets sorted out. We stay connected even if we're physically scattered. We remember that community is people, not buildings. But where will everyone go? Daniel asked. 30 days isn't enough time. I have a guest room, Walter said suddenly. Mrs. Chin can stay with me. The Rodriguez family can stay with my sister across town, Maria said, appearing in the doorway with several other neighbors who'd heard the commotion. Mr. Johnson, you can take my daughter's old room, another neighbor offered. She moved out last year, it's just sitting empty. One by one, solutions emerged. Not perfect solutions. Not ideal solutions. But community solutions. People helping each other through crisis the way they always had. Grace, what about you and Jasmine? Walter asked. Before I could answer, Daniel spoke. They can stay with me. Everyone turned to look at him. I have 5 houses, Daniel said. Most of them just sitting empty. Grace and Jasmine can stay in the brownstone in Brooklyn. 3 bedrooms, close to Jasmine's university, furnished, completely available. Daniel, I can't, I started. It's not charity, he interrupted. It's not me saving you. It's me offering resources I have to someone I love who needs them. That's what people in community do for each other. That's what Walter's been teaching all of us. He was right. This was different from grand gestures or guilt-driven sacrifices. This was just practical help offered without strings. Okay, I said. Thank you. Over the next few hours, we coordinated temporary housing for everyone. Some people had family they could stay with. Others were offered rooms by neighbors who'd already relocated. A few needed help finding short-term rentals, which Daniel's team helped arrange. It wasn't perfect. Families were going to be split up temporarily. People were going to be inconvenienced. The Sunday soup tradition would be harder to maintain when everyone was scattered. But we were going to survive. As the meeting broke up and people headed home to start packing, I stood with Daniel in Walter's apartment. I'm sorry, Daniel said quietly. I keep trying to help and somehow making things worse. You didn't make this worse. Horizon Properties did that. You actually helped us find a path forward, even if it's not the path we wanted. Some path. Everyone's scattered, housing insecure, facing a lawsuit that could drag on for years. Daniel, look at me. He met my eyes. This is what community looks like in crisis, I said. It's not neat or pretty or satisfying. It's messy and hard and uncertain. But we're facing it together. That's what matters. That's what you've actually helped build, not housing security, but people who trust each other enough to help each other through anything. Even if the lawsuit fails? Even if the land trust gets dissolved? Even if everyone ends up in different neighborhoods? Even then, I said. Because community isn't about proximity. It's about commitment. And you've helped people commit to each other in ways that will last regardless of where they live. Daniel pulled me into a hug, and I felt him shaking slightly. The weight of everything that had happened, everything that might still go wrong, all the ways his help had created new complications. But also the small victories. The families who'd found temporary housing. The neighbors who'd stepped up to help each other. The community that refused to break even when everything else was falling apart. I love you, he whispered. I love you too, I said. And we're going to get through this. Together. It was a promise I desperately wanted to keep. But standing there in Walter's apartment, facing eviction and lawsuits and an uncertain future, I had no idea if it was a promise I could actually make. All I knew was that we'd try. One day at a time. One challenge at a time. One moment of showing up for each other at a time. Just like Walter had taught us. Moving day came faster than any of us expected. I stood in my empty apartment, the place that had been home for 15 years, and felt something break inside me. The walls were bare, showing lighter patches where pictures had hung. The floors echoed without furniture. Even the small marks, the pencil lines on the doorframe tracking Jasmine's height over the years, the scuff on the baseboard from when she'd learned to ride her bike indoors one rainy day, felt like ghosts of a life that was ending. Mom, the truck's here, Jasmine called from the hallway. I took one last look and walked out, locking the door behind me for the final time. Outside, the scene was controlled chaos. Moving trucks lined the street. Neighbors helped each other load boxes, furniture, the accumulated pieces of lives being temporarily scattered across the city. Walter was directing traffic like a general, making sure everyone knew where they were going, who needed help, who had transportation. Daniel was there too, in jeans and a t-shirt, carrying boxes alongside everyone else. I watched him help Mr. Johnson load a heavy dresser, laughing at something the older man said. For a moment, he looked like he belonged. Like he was just another member of our community helping with a move. But then a black SUV pulled up and a woman in an expensive suit got out. She walked straight to Daniel, her expression urgent. "Mr. Whitmore, we need to talk. Now." Daniel glanced at me apologetically, then followed her to the side. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see his expression shift from confusion to shock to something that looked like devastation. He came back over, his face pale. "Grace, I need to go. Something's happened with the lawsuit. My lawyers need me downtown immediately." "What's wrong?" "I don't know yet. But it's urgent." He squeezed my hand. "I'll call you as soon as I know anything." He left, and I felt a cold knot of dread in my stomach. Nothing good happened when lawyers demanded immediate meetings. The moving continued. By evening, the building was empty. I stood with Walter outside, looking up at the structure that had been our home. "Hard to believe it's really over," I said. "Nothing's over," Walter said. "Just changing. Everything changes, Grace. The question is whether we change with it or get left behind." My phone rang. "Daniel." "Grace, you need to come downtown. The Meridian Hotel, Conference Room C. Bring Walter and anyone else from the community who can get here in the next hour. This is important." "Daniel, what's going on?" "Just trust me. Please. Get here as fast as you can." An hour later, 15 of us were crammed into a hotel conference room. Daniel was there, along with Rebecca, Patricia, and a team of lawyers I didn't recognize. But there were also other people. A man I recognized from the news, some city council member. A woman who introduced herself as the head of the city's housing authority. Several people in business attire who looked important but whose roles I couldn't identify. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Daniel said. He looked exhausted but also strangely energized. "What I'm about to tell you is going to sound unbelievable, but I need you to listen to everything before asking questions." He pulled up a presentation on a screen. Financial documents. Corporate structures. Communication records. "This morning, my legal team discovered something while preparing our defense against Horizon Properties' lawsuit," Daniel said. Horizon Properties isn't actually a legitimate real estate development company. It's a shell corporation created specifically to buy up low-income housing, force residents out, and flip the properties for profit. He clicked to the next slide. A complex web of ownership structures. But it goes deeper than that. Horizon Properties is owned by a larger investment fund called Urban Renaissance Capital. And Urban Renaissance Capital is owned by, he paused, a consortium of investors that includes 3 members of Whitmore Technologies' board of directors. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. My own board members created a fake company to buy up affordable housing in neighborhoods where I was doing community work, Daniel continued. They were betting against me. Betting that my housing projects would fail, that I'd either give up or run out of money, and they could sweep in and profit from the displacement. Rebecca stood up. "When Mr. Whitmore's team brought this to me, I authorized a full internal investigation. What we found is extensive. These board members have been actively undermining the company's community initiatives, feeding negative stories to the press, even manipulating stock prices to destabilize Mr. Whitmore's position." She clicked to another slide showing communication records. They thought they were being clever, using encrypted communications, routing everything through shell companies. But they got sloppy. One of them forwarded an email from his personal account. That gave us the thread we needed to unravel the whole thing. The city council member spoke up. "Once this evidence was brought to our attention, we launched our own investigation. What we've found constitutes fraud, housing discrimination, and potentially racketeering charges. The district attorney will be filing criminal charges tomorrow morning." I sat there trying to process this. Daniel's own board members had been working against him. Against us. Creating the very crisis they then used to attack him. There's more, Daniel said quietly. The lawsuit Horizon Properties filed against us? It was designed to fail. They knew it had no legal merit. The point was to create chaos, to tie up the housing projects in legal limbo while they bought up surrounding properties. They were using our community as pawns in a larger real estate scheme. Walter stood up. What does this mean for us? For our housing? It means the lawsuit will be dismissed within days, Rebecca said. It means Horizon Properties' sale of your buildings is being invalidated as the result of fraud. And it means you have options. Patricia stepped forward. The city has agreed to acquire your original buildings through eminent domain. They'll be doing the necessary repairs and converting them to permanently affordable housing under city management. Everyone will be able to move back in within 6 months. The room exploded with reactions. Relief, joy, disbelief, anger at what we'd been put through. But there's another option, Daniel said, raising his voice to be heard. The new building we were planning to move you to? It's also available. The city has agreed to partner with the land trust to acquire it. So you can choose, move back to your original building after repairs, or move to the new building with better amenities. Either way, permanently affordable, community-controlled housing. Mrs. Chin was crying. Maria was hugging her husband. Mr. Johnson looked stunned. I looked at Daniel and suddenly something clicked into place. You knew, I said quietly. Before today. You knew something was wrong with Horizon Properties. The room fell silent. Daniel met my eyes. I suspected. Some things didn't add up. The timing was too convenient, the lawsuit too aggressive, the pressure too coordinated. I had investigators looking into it for weeks. Why didn't you tell us? Because I wasn't sure. Because I didn't want to give you false hope if I was wrong. Because, he paused, because I was terrified that if I was right, it meant people I trusted were betraying not just me, but everyone I cared about. Rebecca spoke up. Mr. Whitmore came to me 3 weeks ago with his suspicions. We worked together to investigate quietly. If we'd gone public too soon, if we'd tipped them off before we had solid evidence, they would have destroyed everything and disappeared. We had to wait until we had an airtight case. 3 weeks, I said. 3 weeks while we packed up our homes, while we made emergency housing arrangements, while we grieved losing our community. You let us go through all of that while you investigated. I'm sorry, Daniel said, and his voice cracked. I know it was cruel. I know you suffered because I kept this quiet. But if I'd told you and then been wrong, if I'd given you hope and then had it crushed again, that wasn't your choice to make. I stood up, anger flooding through me. You don't get to decide what we can handle. You don't get to protect us by lying to us. I didn't lie. You withheld the truth. That's the same thing. I looked around at my neighbors, at people who'd been through hell in the past weeks. We deserve to know. We deserve to be part of the investigation, to have a say in how it was handled. But once again, you made decisions for us instead of with us. The room was silent. Everyone was looking at Daniel, waiting for his response. You're right, he said finally. I was trying to protect you, but that's just another form of control. I should have told you what I suspected. I should have trusted you to handle the uncertainty. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix the trauma of the past 3 weeks, Mr. Johnson said. Sorry doesn't undo packing up my life thinking I was losing my home. No, it doesn't, Daniel agreed. And I can't undo that. But I can learn from it. I can do better going forward. Walter stood up slowly. Daniel, do you know why I make soup every Sunday? Daniel looked confused by the question. Because you want to help people? No. I make soup because my wife died and I was alone and terrified of being forgotten. I make soup because I need connection as much as anyone else needs the food. It was never about me being the helper and everyone else being helped. It was always about all of us needing each other. He walked over to stand in front of Daniel. You still haven't learned that lesson, Walter said quietly. You still see yourself as the helper and us as the helped. You still think your job is to protect and save and fix. But that's not community. That's charity. And charity creates dependence. Community creates interdependence. I don't know how to do that, Daniel admitted. I don't know how to be part of something without trying to fix it. Then learn, Walter said simply. Because Grace is right. You can't build a relationship with her, you can't be part of this community, if you're always operating from a place of power instead of partnership. The city council member cleared his throat. Perhaps we should focus on next steps? The residents need to make decisions about housing options. No, I interrupted. We need to finish this conversation first. Because this is about more than housing. This is about whether we can actually trust Daniel going forward. I turned to face him directly. Daniel, I love you. I meant it when I said it. But I can't be with someone who makes major decisions that affect my life without including me. I can't build a relationship based on you protecting me from hard truths. That's not partnership. That's not equality. That's just a prettier version of the same power dynamic that made you empty before you met us. Tears were running down Daniel's face now. So, what do you want me to do? I want you to actually let go of control, I said. Not performatively, not when it's convenient, but really let go. I want the community land trust to be run by the community, with you as an equal voice, not the benevolent billionaire funding it. I want decisions about the housing projects to be made by the people living in them. I want you to show up and help when asked, not swoop in and save us when you think we need it. What if you make the wrong choice? Daniel asked. What if the community decides something I think is a mistake? Then we live with the consequences of our own decisions, I said. Like adults. Like equals. Like people who deserve autonomy over our own lives. Rebecca stepped forward. If I may offer a perspective? Mr. Whitmore has struggled with this since I became CEO. He wants to give up control, but he's terrified of what happens if he does. It's not malicious. It's fear. Fear of what? Maria asked. Fear of being irrelevant, Rebecca said. Fear that if he's not the one with the power, the answers, the resources, then he doesn't matter. That he's only valuable for what he can give, not for who he is. She looked at Daniel. But here's what you're missing. These people don't love you because of what you give them. They love you despite your money, not because of it. Grace doesn't love billionaire Daniel Whitmore. She loves the man who chops vegetables in Walter's kitchen. The man who shows up every Sunday. The man who's trying to learn. But I keep messing up, Daniel said quietly. Everyone messes up, Walter said. The question is whether you learn from it. Whether you actually change your behavior or just apologize and keep doing the same thing. Daniel looked around the room at all these people he'd tried to help, tried to save, tried to fix. And I could see something shifting in his expression. Some deep realization finally breaking through. Okay, he said. Here's what I propose. The land trust goes forward with full community control. I step down from the board entirely. I'm just another resident if I want to be involved, with the same one vote as everyone else. Rebecca nodded. Whitmore Technologies will provide funding, but it goes into an independent endowment controlled by a board elected by residents. No strings attached. The housing decisions, which building, what repairs, how things are managed, all decided by the people who'll be living there, Daniel continued. I can offer advice if asked, but I don't get final say. And us? I asked quietly. You and me? How does that work if you're actually letting go of control? Daniel walked over to me. It works however you want it to work. You set the pace. You decide how much of your life you want to share with me. You have complete autonomy over this relationship, and I follow your lead. That's not partnership either, I said. That's just reversing the power dynamic. I don't want control over you. I want us to be equals. Then teach me how, Daniel said. Because I genuinely don't know. I've spent my whole adult life being in charge, making decisions, having the final say. I don't know how to be in an equal relationship. But I want to learn. If you're willing to teach me. I looked at this man I loved. This complicated, flawed, trying so hard man who kept getting it wrong but kept trying anyway. Okay, I said. But it starts with radical honesty. No more protecting me from hard truths. No more making decisions you think are for my own good. We talk about everything, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. I can do that. And therapy, I added. You need to work with someone on your control issues, your fear of being irrelevant, all of it. I can't be your therapist and your girlfriend. Already have my first appointment scheduled for next week, Daniel said. Patricia recommended someone who specializes in helping executives transition to healthier relationship dynamics. Patricia raised her hand. That would be me. I sent him 3 names this morning. Despite everything, I laughed. You work fast. I've been telling him to go to therapy for months, Patricia said. He finally listened. The city council member cleared his throat again. This is all very touching, but we do actually need to make some decisions about the housing situation. Residents need to choose between the 2 building options. We need to coordinate the repairs and move-in timelines. We'll need to vote, Walter said. Community meeting. Everyone affected gets a say. When? Rebecca asked. Now, Walter said. Everyone's here. Let's talk through the options and vote tonight. No reason to drag this out. What followed was the most democratic process I'd ever been part of. Patricia laid out the details of both options, returning to our original building after repairs, or moving to the new building. Costs, timelines, amenities, pros and cons of each. Then we talked. Really talked. About what people wanted, what they valued, what scared them about each option. Mrs. Chin wanted to go back to the original building because it was familiar. Maria wanted the new building because it had better schools nearby. Mr. Johnson didn't care about the building as much as making sure we stayed together. Daniel sat quietly through it all. Not offering opinions, not trying to influence anyone, just listening. I could see how hard it was for him to stay quiet, to let people work through decisions without his input. Finally, Walter called for a vote. All in favor of returning to our original building after repairs, raise your hand. 5 hands went up. All in favor of moving to the new building? 10 hands went up. We have consensus, Walter said. The new building it is. Now, what about those who want the original building? Do we split up, or does the minority agree to go with the majority? Mrs. Chin spoke up in halting English. I vote for new building. But I scared. Everything different. What if, Maria said gently, we made sure you had an apartment near mine? So you'd have familiar people around you in the new place. Mrs. Chen's face lit up. That would be good. Yes. One by one, the people who'd voted for the original building found reasons to be okay with the new one. Not because they were pressured, but because the community found ways to address their concerns. By the end of the meeting, it was unanimous. We'd move to the new building together. There's one more thing, Daniel said, standing up. I know I said I wouldn't involve myself in decisions, but I have a request. Just a request, and you're completely free to say no. What? Walter asked. The new building has some commercial space on the ground floor. I'd like to fund a community center there. Not run it, not control it, just fund it. With the understanding that it would be managed by residents, programmed based on community needs, and completely independent of me. He looked at Patricia. I was hoping Patricia might be willing to help set it up. Actually help this time, not take over, but provide expertise and support. Patricia smiled. I'd be honored. Can we see the space first? Maria asked. Before deciding? Of course, Rebecca said. We can arrange a walkthrough tomorrow. The meeting finally wrapped up around midnight. People left tired but hopeful. We had a plan. We had real community control. We had a future that didn't depend on any one person's whims or resources. As everyone was leaving, Walter pulled me aside. You did good tonight, he said. Standing up to Daniel, demanding real partnership. That took courage. I was terrified, I admitted. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. You taught him more in that conversation than I've taught him in months of Sunday soup. Do you think he'll actually change? Or will he fall back into old patterns? Walter considered this. I think he's genuinely trying. But Grace, people don't change overnight. He's going to mess up again. The question is whether you can love him through the mess-ups, whether he'll listen when you call him out, and whether he'll keep working to do better. That sounds exhausting. Love usually is, Walter said, echoing what he'd told me before. But it's also worth it. If you choose it with your eyes open, knowing it'll be hard, but doing it anyway. Daniel walked over, and Walter excused himself tactfully. So, Daniel said. That was intense. Yeah. Are we okay? You and me. I thought about it. Really thought about whether I could be with someone who had this much to learn, this far to go to become the partner I needed. We're not okay yet, I said honestly. But we could be. If you actually do the work. If you go to therapy, if you practice letting go of control, if you keep showing up even when it's hard. I will, Daniel said. I promise. Don't promise, I said. Just do it. One day at a time. One choice at a time. Show me through actions, not words. Okay. He took my hand. Can I still take you on that first date? The community center tour with Patricia. That's not a date. That's a work meeting. Then what would you consider a date? I smiled. Take me to the discount grocery store on 5th. Help me pick out ingredients for soup. Then we'll make it together at my temporary place and deliver it to whoever needs it this week. That's a date. Daniel laughed. Most women would want dinner and a movie. I'm not most women. No, he agreed, pulling me closer. You're definitely not. You're Grace Thompson, the woman who taught a billionaire what actually matters. And I'm lucky you're giving me a chance. We stood there in the empty conference room, holding each other, and I felt something settle in my chest. Hope, maybe. Or trust. Or just the quiet certainty that whatever happened next, we'd face it together. The next morning, I woke up in Daniel's Brooklyn brownstone. Jasmine was still asleep in one of the guest rooms. The house was beautiful but felt hollow. Too big, too empty, too much space for too few people. I made coffee and sat in the enormous kitchen, thinking about everything that had happened. The eviction, the lawsuit, the revelation about the board members, the community meeting. It felt like years had passed in just a few weeks. My phone buzzed. A text from Walter. Sunday soup at my temporary place. 4 p.m. Bring Daniel. We're not letting a little thing like being scattered stop our tradition. I smiled and texted back, we'll be there. Then a text from Rebecca. Building walkthrough scheduled for 2 p.m. today. Patricia and I will meet you there. Bring anyone from the community who wants to see the space. And finally, a text from an unknown number. Ms. Thompson, this is Detective Sarah Martinez with the NYPD Fraud Division. We need to speak with you about the Horizon Properties case. Can you come to the precinct at your earliest convenience? The fight wasn't over yet. There would be statements to give, testimony to provide, a legal process to navigate. The board members who'd orchestrated everything would fight back. They had resources, lawyers, connections. But this time, we had something they didn't. We had community. We had truth. We had people who'd been through hell together and come out stronger. And we had each other. Daniel came into the kitchen, looking rumpled and sleepy. Morning. Is that coffee? I poured him a cup. We have a busy day. Building tour at 2, soup at Walter's at 4, and I need to talk to the police about the fraud case. I'll come with you. To all of it, if you want. Just the soup, I said. The police interview I need to do alone. And the building tour is for community members. You can come, but as just another person, not as the benefactor. I saw him start to argue, then stop himself. Okay, just another person. I can do that. And Daniel. Yes, thank you. For listening last night. For actually hearing what we were saying instead of just defending yourself. I'm trying, he said. I won't always get it right. But I'm trying. That's all I'm asking, I said. We sat in that big, empty kitchen, drinking coffee and planning our day, and it felt like a beginning. Not the fairy tale ending where everything suddenly became perfect. But a real beginning. Messy and uncertain and full of work still to do. But together. And somehow, that felt like enough. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of what was now officially called the Heights Community Building, watching the final touches being put on our new home. The space was transformed. Not fancy, but solid. Clean. Safe. The kind of place where you could actually imagine building a life instead of just surviving. Maria's kids were running through the hallways, their laughter echoing off walls that still smelled like fresh paint. Mrs. Chin was directing movers in a mix of Korean and broken English, somehow making herself perfectly understood. Mr. Johnson was helping Walter set up the community center space on the ground floor. And I was 3 weeks away from finishing my accounting degree. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. Criminal trials for the 3 board members who'd orchestrated the Horizon Properties scheme. They'd all pleaded guilty eventually, facing federal fraud charges and prison time. The restitution they were ordered to pay helped fund additional affordable housing projects across the city. Rebecca had restructured Whitmore Technologies completely, implementing community advisory boards and ethical business standards that became a model for other tech companies. The company's stock had actually gone up once investors realized sustainable practices and community investment could coexist with profitability. Patricia had become the director of the community center, working with residents to develop programs that actually met their needs. Childcare, job training, after-school tutoring, health services. Everything the community had always needed but could never afford. And Daniel. Daniel had done the hardest thing I'd ever seen someone do. He'd actually let go. He'd stepped down from all the land trust boards. He'd stopped trying to solve every problem with money. He'd gone to therapy twice a week and worked on his control issues, his need to be needed, his fear of irrelevance. He'd learned to show up without trying to take over. It hadn't been easy. There were setbacks. Times when his instinct to fix things kicked in and he overstepped. Times when I had to call him out, when we fought, when I wondered if the gap between our worlds was too wide to bridge. But he kept trying. He kept listening. He kept showing up. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, he became just Daniel. Not Daniel the billionaire. Not Daniel the savior. Just Daniel, the man who helped make soup on Sundays and was learning to be an equal partner instead of a benefactor. Mom, Jasmine called from across the lobby. Our furniture's here. I walked over to where the movers were unloading our things. The same old couch from our previous apartment. The same kitchen table. The same bed frame I'd had for 15 years. All the familiar pieces of our life, just in a new setting. But this time, I could afford new things if I wanted them. My degree was almost complete. I had a job lined up at a nonprofit that helped families navigate affordable housing programs. Real job, real salary, real career progression. I'd even paid Daniel back for the first month's rent at his brownstone. He'd tried to refuse, but I insisted. Partnership meant I paid my own way. Grace. I turned to see Patricia walking over with a clipboard. We need to finalize the schedule for the community center's grand opening next week. Can you look over the program? I took the clipboard and scanned the schedule. It was packed. Performances by kids from the building. Speeches by residents about what the community meant to them. A presentation about the land trust model and how other communities could replicate it. Food, music, celebration. And right there in the middle, remarks by Grace Thompson, Community Land Trust Board President. I'd been elected president 3 months ago. Not because of my relationship with Daniel. Not because I'd brought him into our lives. But because the community trusted me to represent their interests, to make decisions that benefited everyone, to keep the focus on what actually mattered. It was terrifying and humbling and the most important responsibility I'd ever had. Looks good, I told Patricia. But can we add something? I want Walter to speak. He should talk about what community actually means, about Sunday soup and real wealth. None of this works without the foundation he built. Patricia smiled. Already asked him. He said yes. Daniel appeared in the doorway carrying boxes. He'd been helping people move in all day, just another volunteer among many. His expensive clothes were dusty and sweaty. He looked exhausted and completely happy. Grace, Mrs. Chin needs help with her TV setup, he said. I tried, but I think I made it worse. I laughed. Billionaire tech mogul can't set up a TV? Apparently not. Also, Maria's asking if you can help her figure out the community garden plot assignments. And Walter wants to know if you've approved the soup kitchen proposal for Tuesday nights. This was my life now. Community decisions and neighbor disputes and the 1,000 small details of helping people build lives together. It was chaotic and demanding and nothing like the quiet struggle of just trying to survive. It was better. I'll handle Mrs. Chen's TV, I said. Can you talk to Maria about the garden plots? And tell Walter yes to Tuesday's soup, but he needs to coordinate with Patricia about kitchen access. Daniel nodded and headed off to his assigned tasks. No resentment about being delegated to. No trying to take over and solve everything himself. Just doing the work like everyone else. Progress. That evening, after all the moving was done and people were settling into their new apartments, Walter hosted the first official Sunday soup in the new community center kitchen. 30 people showed up. Not just from our original building, but from other housing projects Daniel and Rebecca had helped establish across the city. People who'd heard about Sunday soup and wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. We made enough soup for 60 people. Walter directed operations like a conductor, teaching newcomers how to chop vegetables properly, telling stories about the early days when it was just him and a pot in his tiny apartment. Daniel worked quietly beside me, our shoulders touching in the crowded kitchen. We'd been officially dating for 4 months now. It was still complicated. There were still challenges. But we were figuring it out. We'd had our first real fight 3 weeks ago. About money, of course. I'd refused to let him pay for Jasmine's textbooks next semester, and he'd gotten frustrated that I was being stubborn about accepting help. We'd yelled, said things we regretted, and I'd left his house thinking maybe we were too different after all. But then he'd shown up at my apartment the next morning with coffee and an apology. Not a grand gesture, not an expensive gift. Just coffee and genuine remorse and a willingness to talk through why his helping made me feel small instead of supported. We'd spent 3 hours talking about power dynamics and autonomy and what partnership actually looked like when one person had billions and the other was still paying off student loans. We didn't solve everything, but we understood each other better. And that felt like progress. "Soup's ready," Walter announced. "Grace, Maria, start the deliveries. Everyone else, you know the drill." We packed up containers and headed out to deliver soup throughout the building. It was different from the old days. The hallways were brighter, the apartments larger, everything new and clean. But the spirit was the same. Community. Connection. People showing up for each other. I delivered soup to Mrs. Chen on the 2nd floor. Her apartment was still mostly boxes, but she'd already set up her altar with pictures of her late husband and daughter. "You happy here?" I asked as she took the soup. She smiled, her eyes crinkling. "Happy. Good place. Good people." "You did good, Grace." "We did good," I corrected. All of us together. Next stop was the Rodriguez apartment on the 4th floor. Maria answered the door with the baby on her hip and the 2 older kids doing homework at the kitchen table. "Soup delivery," I said. "You're a lifesaver," Maria said, taking the container. "I've been helping people move in all day. Haven't even thought about dinner." "That's what we're here for." I handed her an extra container. "This one's for tomorrow. Just heat it up when you need it." Maria's eyes got watery. "Grace, I keep thinking about how close we came to losing all this. To being scattered across the city, losing touch with each other. And then I think about how we fought back. How we didn't give up. We didn't fight alone," I reminded her. "We had help. We had luck. We had people who cared enough to investigate and expose the fraud." "We had you," Maria said. "You brought Daniel into our lives. Even when it got complicated, even when he made mistakes, you didn't give up on him or on us. You kept pushing for what was right." I hugged her, feeling emotional. We kept pushing together. That's how this works. I made my way through the building, delivering soup and checking on people and feeling gratitude so intense it almost hurt. This was what Daniel's money had bought. Not buildings or amenities or even housing security, though those were important. He'd bought us time and space to build something real. He'd bought us the opportunity to create community on our own terms. But the community itself? That was ours. Built by Sunday soups and shared struggles and people choosing to show up for each other again and again. I met Daniel back at the community center. He was cleaning up the kitchen with Walter and a few others. "All deliveries done?" he asked. "All done. Everyone's settling in okay." Walter dried his hands on a towel. "Grace, Daniel, I want to talk to you both for a minute." We followed him to a quiet corner of the community center. "I'm proud of you," Walter said simply. "Both of you. Grace, you've become an incredible leader. You've kept this community together through crisis after crisis. You've learned when to fight and when to compromise and when to ask for help. You've grown into exactly the person this community needed." He turned to Daniel. "And you. You've done something I've seen very few rich people manage. You've actually changed. Not performed change, but genuinely transformed how you see the world and your place in it. You've learned to be part of something instead of running it. That takes real courage." Daniel looked uncomfortable with the praise. "I still mess up a lot." "Everyone messes up," Walter said. "The difference is you actually learn from it. You listen when people call you out. You do the hard work of changing your behavior instead of just apologizing and continuing on. He looked at both of us. You two are good for each other. Grace keeps Daniel grounded. Daniel challenges Grace to think bigger. You balance each other. Don't lose that. We won't, I said, taking Daniel's hand. Good. Because I'm not getting any younger, and I'd like to see some grandkids before I die. Doesn't matter if they're biological or adopted or however you two decide to build your family. I just want to make soup for the next generation. I laughed through sudden tears. Walter, you're 73, not 90. You've got plenty of time. Maybe, maybe not. Point is, don't waste time. If you love each other, build a life together. Don't let fear or complications or other people's opinions stop you. He hugged us both and shuffled off to supervise the final cleanup, leaving Daniel and me standing together in the empty community center. He's not subtle, Daniel said. Never has been. Is that what you want? A life together? Marriage and kids and all of it. I looked at this man who'd learned to chop vegetables and listen to criticism and show up without needing to be the hero. This man who was still learning, but trying so hard to do better. Eventually, I said, not right now. I need to finish my degree, start my career, establish my own independence. And you need to keep working on yourself, keep going to therapy, keep learning how to be an equal partnership. But eventually? Eventually, yes. If we keep growing together instead of apart. If we keep being honest even when it's hard. If we keep choosing each other every day instead of just once. Daniel pulled me close. I can do that. I want to do that. We stood there holding each other, and through the windows I could see our community. People in their new apartments. Lights coming on in windows. The building coming alive with the sounds of families settling in for the evening. This was what we'd built. Not just housing, but home. My phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine. Mom, I know you're having a moment with Daniel, but I need to talk to you about something important. I smiled and texted back, home in 20 minutes. Everything okay? Everything's great. Just want to discuss plans for next year. Love you. Love you too. I showed Daniel the text. I should get home. Jasmine wants to talk about something. Want me to come with? I thought about it. About what it meant to invite him into conversations with my daughter. About the level of commitment that represented. Yes, I said. Come with me. We walked the 3 blocks to my new apartment together. The neighborhood was quiet, safe. Streetlights worked. No broken windows or graffiti. It was nice, and I was still getting used to nice being part of my life. Jasmine was in the living room with her laptop when we arrived. She'd made tea and set out cookies I'd baked the night before. Okay, this feels formal, I said, sitting down. What's going on? I got accepted into a graduate program, Jasmine said, and her face lit up. MIT. Full scholarship. For mechanical engineering. I screamed. Actually screamed. Jumped up and pulled her into a hug while crying happy tears. Baby, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. Daniel was grinning. Congratulations, Jasmine. That's a huge achievement. Thanks. Jasmine pulled back from the hug. But here's the thing. It's in Boston. I'd have to move. And Mom, I don't want to leave you right when you're starting your new job and building a life here. Don't be ridiculous, I said immediately. You're going. This is your dream. You've worked so hard for this. But, no buts. You're going to MIT. We'll figure out the rest. Jasmine looked at Daniel. Will you make sure she's okay? I know you two are still figuring things out, but Mom's terrible at asking for help. She's going to work herself to exhaustion trying to do everything alone. Jasmine. I protested. I'll look after her, Daniel promised. And Jasmine? Boston's only a few hours away. You can come home whenever you want. And we can visit you. This doesn't have to mean losing connection. Jasmine asked with a knowing smile. Daniel glanced at me. If Grace is comfortable with that. I don't want to overstep. I confirmed. You're part of this family now. Complicated and still figuring things out, but part of it. Jasmine hugged us both. Good. Because I like having him around. He makes you happy, Mom. I see it in your face when he's here. You light up. After Jasmine went to her room to start planning her move, Daniel and I sat on my couch, the same couch from my old apartment, now in my new living room, and processed everything. "Your daughter's going to MIT," Daniel said. "Grace, that's incredible." "I know. I can't believe it. My baby girl, studying engineering at one of the best schools in the country." I started crying again, happy tears this time. "You did that," Daniel said softly. "You raised an incredible young woman while working 3 jobs and going to school yourself. You should be so proud." "I am. But Daniel, I'm also terrified. She's leaving. I've never been without her. For 22 years, she's been the center of my entire life. What do I do when she's gone?" "You build the next chapter," Daniel said. "You focus on your career. You keep leading the community. You figure out what Grace wants, not just what Grace's daughter needs." "And us?" I asked quietly. "What happens with us when I'm dealing with empty nest syndrome and you're still working on your issues?" "We figure it out together," Daniel said. "We stumble through it. We make mistakes and fix them. We keep choosing each other even when it's hard." He took my hand. "Grace, I know I'm not perfect. I know I still have work to do on myself. But I love you. I love your strength and your honesty, and the way you call me out when I'm being an idiot. I love how you're an incredible mother and leader and friend. I love who I'm becoming because you're in my life." "I love you too," I said. "Even when you're frustrating and controlling and still learning how to be an equal partner. I love the effort you're making. I love that you keep showing up." We kissed, and it felt like a promise. Not the promise that everything would be perfect or easy, but the promise that we'd keep trying, keep choosing each other, keep building something real. My phone rang. "Walter." "Grace, turn on Channel 7 News. Right now." I grabbed the remote and switched on the TV. There was a news segment about affordable housing initiatives in the city. And there, on screen, was footage of our building, of the community center, of people moving in. The anchor was talking about how the Heights Community Land Trust model was being studied by cities across the country, how it represented a new approach to housing security that balanced community control with sustainable funding. They interviewed Patricia about how the model worked. They showed clips of kids playing in the community center. They talked about the Horizon Properties fraud case and how exposing it had led to broader investigations into predatory real estate practices. And then they showed a clip from last week's community meeting. Walter talking about Sunday soup. Maria discussing how the community supported each other. Mr. Johnson explaining how the land trust gave residents real power over their housing. And there I was, in the background, taking notes and nodding. "You're on TV," Daniel said, sounding amazed. "So are you," I pointed out. He was visible in another shot, helping carry boxes during move-in day. The segment ended with the anchor saying, "This story of community resilience and innovative housing solutions shows what's possible when people work together." For Channel 7 News, this is Marcus Williams reporting. Walter called back. "Did you see it?" "We saw it." "We're famous now," Walter said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Maybe this will inspire other communities. Maybe we've started something bigger than just our own building." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe we've just shown that community is possible anywhere if people are willing to work for it. Either way, it's good. Grace, you should be proud. You've helped build something that matters." After we hung up, I sat with Daniel and thought about how far we'd all come. 6 months ago, we were facing eviction, betrayal, and the collapse of everything we'd hoped for. We were scattered and scared and unsure if we'd ever have security again. Now we had homes. Real homes, permanently affordable, community-controlled. We had jobs and futures and hope. We had proof that change was possible. That communities could fight back. That people with vastly different resources could work together if they approached each other with honesty and respect. It wasn't perfect. There were still struggles. Families in our building were still dealing with poverty, health issues, systemic barriers that housing alone couldn't fix. But we were dealing with them together. And that made all the difference. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel asked. "I'm thinking about my mother," I said. "She died when I was 19. Before Jasmine was born. Before any of this. But she used to say something that stuck with me." "What was that?" "She said the measure of a life isn't what you accumulate, but what you give away." Not money or possessions, but yourself. Your time, your care, your presence. She said the richest people are the ones who give themselves fully to the people around them. I looked at Daniel. You're learning that now. You spent years accumulating wealth and power, thinking that was the point. But the real wealth is this. I gestured around us. Community. Connection. Love. People who matter to you and who you matter to. Your mother sounds like she was wise. She was. I wish she could see this. See what we've built. See that her daughter figured out what actually matters. I think she'd be proud, Daniel said. I think she'd see how you took her lessons and built a life around them. How you raised an incredible daughter, led a community through crisis, and loved someone enough to push them to be better. I leaned against him, feeling grateful and exhausted and hopeful. So what happens now? I asked. Grand opening next week. Jasmine leaving for MIT in the fall. Both of us figuring out new chapters in our lives. What's next? I don't know, Daniel admitted. For the first time in my adult life, I don't have a detailed plan. I'm just showing up and seeing what happens. How does that feel? He thought about it. Terrifying. But also kind of amazing. Like, anything is possible. Anything is possible, I said. That's what we've proven. That change is possible. That community is possible. That people from different worlds can build something real together. I looked at him seriously. But Daniel, you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll keep going to therapy. Keep working on your control issues. Keep listening when people call you out. Don't let this moment of success make you think you're done growing. I promise, he said. Grace, I'll probably be in therapy for years. Maybe forever. These patterns are deep. But I'll keep working on them. Because you deserve a partner who's doing the work, not just talking about it. Good. Because I'm going to keep calling you out when you mess up. I wouldn't want it any other way. We sat together on my couch in my new apartment, in my new life, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of having no problems, but the peace of knowing I could handle whatever came next. The peace of having community and love and purpose. The peace of finally, truly understanding what my mother had tried to teach me all those years ago. Real wealth isn't what you have. It's who you have. It's who you are to the people around you. It's the life you build through connection and care and showing up, again and again, for the people who matter. I had that now. We all did. And it was worth more than any amount of money in the world. I stood at the podium in the Meridian Hotel's Grand Ballroom, the same room where Daniel had announced his decision to work with Rebecca a year and a half ago, looking out at hundreds of community organizers, housing advocates, and city officials. Thank you all for coming to the first annual Community Land Trust Summit, I said, and my voice was steady despite my nerves. When we started this journey, we were just one community trying to save our homes. We didn't set out to start a movement. We were just trying to survive. I clicked to the next slide. Data showing 23 new community land trusts established in cities across the country in the past year. Thousands of families with secure, permanently affordable housing. Communities taking control of their own futures. But what we learned is that our story isn't unique. Communities everywhere are fighting displacement, gentrification, housing insecurity. And what we've proven is that there's another way. Communities can own their housing. Residents can have real power over their futures. It's possible. I saw Walter in the front row, beaming with pride. Next to him, Patricia and Rebecca, who'd become unlikely friends over the past year. Maria and several other residents from our building, who'd become advocates and organizers themselves. And in the back, trying to be inconspicuous, Daniel. Supporting but not leading. Present but not controlling. Exactly where he should be. The model we've built isn't perfect, I continued. It's hard work. It requires communities to come together, make decisions collectively, take ownership of their futures. It requires patience and compromise and people who are willing to put in the effort. I paused. But it works. And it's replicable. That's why we're all here today. To share what we've learned. To support each other. To build a movement of communities taking back control of housing from corporate interests and predatory developers. The presentation continued for another 30 minutes. Case studies, best practices, lessons learned. Other speakers shared their own community land trust stories. By the end of the day, we'd formed a national network of organizers committed to expanding the model. That evening, there was a small celebration. Just close friends and colleagues. Walter made soup, of course, in the hotel's kitchen. We crowded into a conference room that felt intimate despite the fancy surroundings. "Grace, I have news," Jasmine announced via video call from MIT. "I got funding for my research project. It's about developing sustainable, affordable building materials for low-income housing." "Of course you did," I said, crying happy tears. "I'm so proud of you." "Learned from the best," Jasmine said. "You showed me that engineering isn't just about building things. It's about building things that matter, that help people, that make the world better." After the call, Daniel pulled me aside. "I have something for you," he said, looking nervous. "Daniel, if this is another grand gesture." "It's not," he interrupted. "I promise. It's just something I wanted to give you. No strings attached. You can say no." He handed me a small box. Not a ring box, thankfully. We'd talked about marriage but agreed we weren't there yet. Both of us still had growing to do. I opened it. Inside was a key. "It's to my brownstone in Brooklyn," Daniel said. "The one you and Jasmine stayed in during the transition. I know you have your own apartment now. I know you need your independence. But I'm offering it as a shared space. A place we can both call home when you're ready. No timeline, no pressure. Just an offer." I looked at the key, thinking about what it represented. Not him providing for me, but us building something together. Shared space. Shared life. Partnership. "I'm not ready to move in," I said honestly. "I need more time in my own space. But I love that you're offering. I love that you're thinking about our future together. So you'll keep it?" "The key?" "I'll keep it," I said. "As a promise. That when I'm ready, when we're ready, we'll build that next chapter together." Daniel kissed me, and it felt like coming home and stepping into the unknown all at once. Walter came over with bowls of soup. "You two need to eat. Grace, you've been talking all day. Daniel, you've been stress-eating those cheese cubes for an hour." We sat with Walter and the others, eating soup and sharing stories and laughing about the journey that had brought us here. "I have an announcement," Walter said, standing up. "I'm retiring from Sunday Soup." The room went silent. Shocked silence. "Walter, no," I started. "Let me finish," he said with a smile. "I'm retiring from making the soup. But I'm promoting Grace and Daniel to head soup makers. It's time for the next generation to take over the tradition." "We can't replace you," Daniel protested. "You're not replacing me. You're continuing what I started. That's how community works. One generation builds something, the next generation carries it forward and makes it their own. I'll still be there, just as an advisor instead of the leader." He looked at us seriously. "You two have learned what I was trying to teach. About community, about real wealth, about showing up for people. Now it's time for you to teach others. To pass it on. That's how we change the world, one person, one community, one bowl of soup at a time." I hugged Walter, crying into his shoulder. "Thank you. For everything. For teaching me, for believing in me, for building something beautiful and letting me be part of it." "You didn't just become part of it," Walter said. "You became the heart of it. You took what I started and made it into something bigger. Something that's changing lives across the country. I'm proud of you, Grace." Later, as the celebration wound down, I stood with Daniel looking out at the city through the hotel windows. "A year and a half ago, you walked into Mel's diner and sarcastically asked me for financial advice," I said. "Best decision I ever made," Daniel replied. "You know what's funny? The advice I gave you that first night, about the richest man I know being my neighbor who has nothing but shares everything, I still believe that. Walter is still the richest person I know." "I don't know," Daniel said thoughtfully. "I think you might be the richest person I know now." "Me?" "Daniel, you have billions. And you have community. You have people who love you for who you are, not what you can give them. You have purpose and meaning and the satisfaction of building something that actually matters. You have Jasmine and Walter and all these people whose lives you've changed. That's real wealth, Grace. That's what you taught me." I leaned against him, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, 23 communities were building land trusts. Hundreds of families were staying in their homes. Thousands of people were learning that change was possible. We'd started with one conversation in a diner at 3 in the morning. One waitress telling one billionaire an uncomfortable truth. And it had grown into something neither of us could have imagined. So what's next for us? Daniel asked. Personally, I mean. Not the movement or the work. What's next for Grace and Daniel? I don't know, I admitted. But for the first time in my life, I'm okay with not knowing. I trust that we'll figure it out together. Together, Daniel echoed. I like the sound of that. We stood there holding each other, and I thought about my mother's words about the measure of a life being what you give away. I thought about Walter making soup for years, building community bowl by bowl. I thought about Jasmine studying sustainable building materials to help more communities like ours. I thought about Daniel, who'd learned to give away his need for control, his fear of irrelevance, his attachment to power. Who'd discovered that the richest version of himself was the one who showed up as an equal, not a savior. And I thought about myself. About the scared single mother who'd had nothing but determination and love for her daughter. Who'd rebuilt her life from nothing twice. Who'd learned that real security comes from community, not bank accounts. We'd all given pieces of ourselves to each other. And in return, we'd received something more valuable than any of us could have bought or achieved alone. We'd received belonging, purpose, love, community, real wealth. The kind that can't be stolen or lost or devalued. The kind that grows when you share it. The kind that actually matters. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Ms. Thompson, my name is Jennifer Martinez. I'm organizing a community in Detroit trying to fight displacement. I saw your presentation today. Can we talk? I think you could help us. I showed Daniel the text. Are you going to help her? He asked. Of course, I said. That's what we do now. We help communities save themselves. We, Daniel said with a smile. I like that you keep saying we. Well, you're part of this now. For better or worse, you're part of building this movement. Are you ready for that? I'm ready, he said. As long as you're leading and I'm just supporting. As long as we keep doing this the right way. I texted Jennifer back. I'd be happy to talk. Let me know when works for you. And Jennifer? You don't need me to save you. You just need support to save yourselves. That's the real secret. Community has to come from within. But I'll help however I can. She responded immediately. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you. Daniel and I left the hotel and walked through the city streets. It was late, but the night was warm and beautiful. We passed homeless people sleeping in doorways, couples on dates, late-night workers heading home. All of them part of the city. All of them deserving of dignity and security and community. We couldn't save everyone. We couldn't fix systemic poverty or housing inequality or all the ways society failed its most vulnerable people. But we could build models that worked. We could share knowledge. We could support communities fighting to save themselves. We could show that change was possible. One community at a time. One conversation at a time. One bowl of soup at a time. That was enough. It had to be enough. We reached my apartment building, our community building, and I looked up at the windows. Lights on in most of them. People home, safe, secure. Building lives in places they controlled. Thank you, I said to Daniel. For what? For walking into that diner. For asking that sarcastic question. For being willing to learn and change and become someone who actually helps instead of just throwing money at problems. For loving me and my community enough to do the hard work. Thank you for answering honestly that night, Daniel said. For teaching me what actually matters. For calling me out when I mess up. For loving me despite all my flaws and mistakes. For showing me what real wealth looks like. We kissed goodnight, and I went up to my apartment. It was quiet. Jasmine was in Boston. The space was mine alone. I made tea and sat on my couch, the same couch that had been with me through everything. And I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From struggling single mother to community leader. From waitress to housing advocate. From survival mode to actually building a life that mattered. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been straightforward. There had been setbacks and losses and moments when I'd wanted to give up. But I'd kept going. We'd all kept going. We'd shown up for each other, again and again, until showing up became who we were instead of just what we did. That was the real lesson. That was what I'd learned from Walter and taught to Daniel and would now share with communities across the country. Community isn't something you have. It's something you do. Every day. Every choice. Every moment of showing up for people even when it's inconvenient or hard or scary. That's real wealth. That's what actually matters. And now I had it. We all did. I picked up my phone and started drafting an email to Jennifer in Detroit. Sharing resources, offering advice, connecting her with Patricia and others who could help. Building community. One connection at a time. Outside my window, the city hummed with life. Millions of people, all trying to make it through another day. All deserving of dignity and security and belonging. I couldn't help them all. But I could help some. And those some would help others. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, we'd build a movement. We'd change what was possible. We'd prove that communities could save themselves. We'd show that real wealth isn't what you accumulate, but what you give away. That's what the billionaire learned from the waitress at 3 in the morning. That's what changed both our lives forever. And that's what we'd spend the rest of our lives teaching others. One conversation at a time. One community at a time. One bowl of soup at a time. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this story. If you enjoyed Grace and Daniel's journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's struggling, someone who's fighting for their community, or someone who needs a reminder about what actually matters in life. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what lesson from this story resonated most with you. Was it Walter's wisdom about community? Grace's strength in standing up for what's right? Daniel's journey of transformation? I read every comment and I love hearing from you. And if you're facing housing insecurity or community displacement, know that you're not alone. There are resources out there. There are people fighting for change. You have power even when it doesn't feel like it. This story is fiction, but the principles are real. Community land trusts exist. People are building them across the country. Change is possible. You just have to be willing to show up and do the work. Thanks again for being here. Take care of yourselves and each other. Remember, real wealth isn't what you have, it's who you have and who you are to the people around you. See you in the next story.